Such clear logic in his speech, truly rare, said Mu Yiqing, her eyes shimmering as she looked at Xiang Beifei. This answer indeed interrupted the series of questions she had prepared, and she even felt as if she had met her match. Normally, when she asked questions, people tended to cower because of her SSR status, allowing her to lead the conversation. But Xiang Beifei wouldn't. Truth spoken by Xiang Beifei in front of you. Speech value +8. Truth spoken by Xiang Beifei in front of you. Speech value +8. Xiang Beifei seemed to have discovered the pattern. When he replied, the number of words he said would add that much to Mu Yiqing's speech value. The type of person she most wanted to encounter was a chatterbox. The more the other party spoke, the happier she was. The last person she wanted to face was probably someone like Xiang Beifei, who was stingy with his words, or someone like Xiaohe, a fellow who could mean countless things with a single woof. After a long pause, Mu Yiqing asked slowly, "So, when you encountered Zhu Pengfei, in your view, was he a desolate beast or a real person?" As soon as this question was posed, whether it was from Qingzhou University, Yenzhou University, or those other schools that were framed by Zhu Pengfei, all the professors moved slightly, holding their breath and focusing on Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei, shrouded by the word spirit, his answer was extremely important, because this answer was the key to the current conflict. It determined the direction of many things. Whether Zhu Pengfei died just after entering the domain outside Juzhou or in the withered forest where he encountered Xiang Beifei were two different concepts. If Xiang Beifei admitted that he killed the real Zhu Pengfei, then there would certainly be issues between Yenzhou University and the other elite universities, but it would also confirm that Xiang Beifei was a murderer, bringing heaps of trouble. For example, on what basis did he believe that Zhu Pengfei colluded with desolate beasts? Whether there was speculation, or whether it fell under subjective judgment. And what if Zhu Pengfei was coerced? What if his intention was to set up a meticulous plan to contend with the desolate beasts, and he was accidentally killed by Xiang Beifei? As long as there was no substantial evidence, Yenzhou University could point out problems at any time, then push all the blame onto Xiang Beifei, and Ren Jianghai of Qingzhou University could also take the opportunity to act out. Now, Mu Yiqing was watching Xiang Beifei, waiting for his answer. Xiang Beifei slowly opened his mouth and said, "Desolate beast. Current word spirit detection value. Truth. Truth spoken by Xiang Beifei in front of you. Speech value +2. Mu Yiqing, looking at her system interface, nodded thoughtfully. It seems that Zhu Pengfei's death indeed has nothing to do with Xiang Beifei. It must be due to the desolate beast. The initial explanation was probably correct. Zhu Pengfei was killed by a desolate beast shortly after he entered the domain outside Jizhou. Mu Yiqing thought to herself. Although Mu Yiqing expressly stated that she did not regard Xiang Beifei as the guilty party. In truth, she was still interrogating him in another way. And as an SSR-level awakener, she was more than capable of interrogating an N-level awakener. An N-level awakener had no chance of lying in front of an SSR. Explore more adventures at Novelbin.com. She did not believe that Xiang Beifei had the ability to fool her. So, after the word spirit sphere showed no reaction, she believed Xiang Beifei's words. Of course, it was not so much about trusting Xiang Beifei as it was about trusting her system's capabilities. Xiang Beifei's expression remained calm, not even lifting an eyelid. Zhu Xinjue, no matter how you looked at it, deserved to die. But it was impossible for him to rely on Zhu Xinjue's identity to expose UR-level Zhu Yiji. How could the Zhuzhou Alliance go after a UR when even during the Beast Tide, which caused the death of so many people, they wanted to protect an SSR from Elder Luo's wrath? So, there was no point in bringing up Zhu Xinjue's affairs. There was a high probability he would just face retaliation from Zhu Yiji. Zhu Xinjue was dead, and that was enough. As for the rest, before he was strong enough, Xiang Beifei would not make trouble for himself. As for Mu Yiqing wanting to probe him using her system abilities, did she ask Xiaohe? Xiaohe was on Xiang Beifei's shoulder, licking its paws, staring intently at Mu Yiqing's system interface, its little eyes rolling about. To its little brain, looking at the numbers on Mu Yiqing's system interface was probably like looking at a courier's tracking number. Mu Yiqing continued to ask, "Then how did you defeat the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage?" "By using stream water." "Stream water." "There is a stream on the mountain that flows up to the peak. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage could feed on our spiritual power using the stream, but the water was also their nemesis. We discovered this problem and used the stream to deal with them," Xiang Beifei explained. "Is there something special about the water in that stream? Did you investigate it?" Many became attentive. They had not understood the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage before, nor did they know the weaknesses of these desolate beasts. If they could investigate the origin of the stream, it meant they could create tools to counter them. Xiang Beifei handed them a wooden jar filled with water. He had plenty of these, as Xiaohe had stored a lot of bubbles. Giving them some was no big deal, besides, even if he didn't, someone else would. Ren Jianghai immediately took it from him, opened the jar, carefully examined it, and then frowned deeply, saying, "Are you joking? Where is the devouring of spiritual power? This is just ordinary water." "Ordinary water?" Xiang Beifei slightly furrowed his brow, casting an inquiring look at Xiaohe. Xiaohe fumbled with a bubble and suddenly raised its head in surprise. Woof! It had turned into ordinary stream water. "So, does that mean the water loses its effect after leaving that mountain? So it's not that the stream water is special, but that segment of the black wood is?" Xiang Beifei thought it over and could only come up with this reason, but he did not give a detailed explanation, merely stating, "The others can all testify. Current word spirit detection value. Truth. Xiang Beifei has told the truth in front of you. Speech value +8. He's telling the truth," Mu Yiqing said. With SSR Mu Yiqing speaking up, Ren Jianghai and the others had no grounds to argue further, as anyone who knew Mu Yiqing was aware of her methods, particularly her knack for interrogating suspects, with hardly ever a failure. Since Xiang Beifei had not lied, it suggested there must be something peculiar about the stream water. Professor Zhao also turned to find Chang Exinen, took the sample of stream water from him, and discovered that it was not special in any way. "Perhaps it is due to the mountain or maybe the soil," Professor Zhao Yuba said. All were experienced martial artists, quickly coming up with other possibilities. Mu Yiqing asked Xiang Beifei many questions, all of which were gentle and seemingly flawless yet piercing to the core. Xiang Beifei addressed each one in turn. Neither humble nor arrogant, he provided reasoned and substantiated responses. "I have finished my questioning, and everything he has said is the truth. Everyone can rest assured. I can guarantee that," she said. Mu Yiqing removed the word spirit ring from Xiang Beifei and then spoke to Ren Jianghai. "President Ren, you can now dispel the doubts in your mind. Their survival has nothing to do with desolate beasts. The pressing matter is to focus the investigation elsewhere." Mu Yiqing then turned to Professor Luo and said, "Professor Luo, you have taught very outstanding students. It is admirable that Xiang Beifei could lead 2 teams to survive under such conditions." When she spoke, she assumed a very humble attitude, considering herself a junior despite being an SSR and having graduated many years ago. After all, the professors present from elite universities were all distinguished in their own rights. Mu Yiqing's words left both Elder Luo and Ren Jianghai without anything more to say. She gave Xiang Beifei a meaningful glance once again before moving on to question the next person. The Alliance searched for a full 10 days. In 10 days, they had nearly cleared all the desolate beasts in the area. They searched thousands of miles in that region, but there was still no news of the missing SR students. No matter what methods were utilized, they could not find any traces left by Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage. It was apparent that this desolate beast came prepared. Even if it were killed, it would not leave any avenues for investigation. The magnitude of the incident meant it was bound to cause an uproar. Needless to say, Xiang Beifei and the others left the outskirts of the desolate wilderness that very day. They did not participate in the search and rescue, but in case they needed to provide clues, they still had to stay at Qingzhou University until everything was over. Elder Luo and the other professors also joined the search and only returned on the 10th day. "What's left is not for us to handle. It's up to the Alliance to deal with. We'll go back to the school tomorrow," Elder Luo said. They were all professors with teaching duties, plus the students needed to continue their classes. Any further delay was impractical, so the remaining search efforts were left to the Alliance, and professors from other schools prepared to take their students back first. Everyone agreed without objections, as the incident had truly worn everyone out. During those 10 days, Xiang Beifei and his group had been called in for questioning over 10 times, leaving everyone in a poor mood, often being roused from sleep in the middle of the night. What was supposedly cooperation with the case investigation was, in fact, interrogation. The Alliance dispatched various individuals to question them, all with varying abilities and powerful SSRs, some of which Xiang Beifei couldn't even see on the system interface. Fortunately, Elder Luo always insisted on being present when his students were questioned, and so the Alliance personnel did not dare to be too presumptuous. After returning to school, they rested for quite a while. The whole of Juzhou was also stirred by these events. Ordinary people hadn't seen what happened in the desolate wilderness outside the domain, nor did they know the contents of the competition, but the matter of the missing students could not be concealed. If hidden, the families who had lost their children would not agree, the schools would not allow it, and everyone needed an explanation. Even though the Alliance had powerful UR-level measures to suppress, they could not be too excessive overtly. The elite schools that lost students also had their factions within the Alliance, and thus the Alliance took all aspects of this matter seriously. Whoever needed to manage the aftermath did so. Whoever needed to take responsibility did. Apologies were made where necessary, and compensations were offered where due. The public outcry over this incident lasted a full month, boiling over on the internet with more fervor than when N-level students were admitted into elite universities. However, Jojo Alliance handled the confidentiality of the other surviving students well, not disclosing the identities and experiences of Xiang Beifei and the other contestants. Xiang Beifei was powerless over these matters. What he needed to do was to practice cultivation, continue to open up his meridians, and enhance his cultivation level. Although Shi Renmei had been killed by him, it did not mean the matter was over. More formidable than Shi Renmei was Broken Throat. The man known as Broken Throat had a very powerful aura at the time, likely not inferior to that of the God-refining phase. He had not attacked Xiang Beifei's group, likely because Sun Hushuan and Yang Chengze had entered the Withering Woods. Sun Hushuan was above the God-refining phase, and Shi Renmei's death surely sent a signal to Broken Throat, so they did not reveal themselves before Sun Hushuan and swiftly retreated instead. But this incident made Xiang Beifei even more determined to increase his cultivation level as soon as possible. He didn't want to depend on others every time there was trouble. Nevertheless, a month later, the investigation into this matter had also yielded a generally clear outline. Yi Changfeng walked into the small woods and saw Xiang Beifei, who had fallen into the lake again. He lifted his glasses and asked, "Haven't gotten ashore yet?" "Almost there." Xiang Beifei struggled to get up from the lake and crawled towards the shore, then used his spiritual power to dry the water on his body before sitting down on a chair at the edge of the grass, heaving a long sigh of relief. Elder Luo, lounging on a deck chair, lazily asked, "How's the progress over there?" "Still searching. They asked me to seek your advice, Elder. After all, you know more about desolate beasts than anyone else," Yi Changfeng said as he sat down. "Ah, now they remember me?" Elder Luo snorted lightly. He wasn't fond of those Alliance folks. But since the matter this time was quite serious, concerning those students, he couldn't be bothered to argue with the Alliance people and asked, "What do you want to ask?" "What do you think of this matter, Elder Luo?" Yi Changfeng inquired. Elder Luo thought for a moment and said, "I can only speculate about the withered forest based on the clues they've investigated." How exactly did the withered forest disappear? Xiang Beifei had always been puzzled about this matter. The former withered forest was like a plain, but now where it should have been was a rugged stone forest, two different terrains that seemed impossible to reconcile. If I'm not mistaken, that's a projection, a very strange ability that we've never seen before. But I've found some records. The ghost mustache of remnant visage. They must have forcibly projected the withered forest from somewhere else to here. Elder Luo handed a handful of sunflower seeds to Xiang Beifei. "A projection?" Xiang Beifei took the seeds and started cracking them, replenishing his spiritual power. Similar to a mirage, except the scene it projects can be indistinguishable from the real thing. You can understand it as once you enter it, the projection becomes reality. Those who get trapped inside must break the projection's ability from within to get out, Elder Luo explained. So that's how it is. Yi Changfeng nodded thoughtfully. A mirage was an illusion created by the refraction of light casting distant scenes elsewhere, usually producing only a shadow, something untrue. But the question was, desolate beasts had more control over the external wilderness than any human, yet they had somehow managed to project an entire withered forest from somewhere else. This was the first time Xiang Beifei had heard of such a projecting ability. Xiang Beifei pondered over this ability, because it wasn't system-generated, he hadn't noticed it at first. So what kind of desolate beast is the tree man exactly? Xiang Beifei asked. Elder Luo shook his head. There's not much recorded. The records of this kind of desolate beast are even scarcer than those of ghostly visage. The existing material only contains one line in the essential domain. There's a kind of tree that turns into a person, unknown what desolate beast it is. Just that simple a line, not even a definitive name, Elder Luo said. The essential domain, a 4th grade danger level area in the external wilderness. The more dangerous the area, the less dare pioneers venture deeply into it, as it is very easy for things to go wrong, hence the scant records. Xiang Beifei thought of the term Northern District of the Essential Domain. Again, Xiang Tianqing disappeared in that area. Not only did the ghost whiskers of remnant visage silently transfer you from the 2nd danger zone, the Marquee Domain, to the 3rd danger zone, the Tranquil Domain, but they also projected the withered forest from the 4th danger zone, the Essential Domain, to the Tranquil Domain before choosing to act against you there. What they are trying to achieve by doing this you probably can figure out, Elder Luo said seriously. To hide themselves? Beifei ventured. Elder Luo nodded slightly and said, Yes, these desolate beasts are concealing themselves. Last time, I mentioned they might belong to the Tranquil Domain, but now it seems that the ghost whiskers of remnant visage are more mysterious than we thought. They might actually belong to the 4th region, the Essential Domain. Most of the records about the ghost whiskers of remnant visage were of sightings in the 3rd region, the Tranquil Domain, so everyone mistook them for a desolate beast from the Tranquil Domain. However, if they could utilize the tree men of the 4th region, they couldn't possibly be just from the 3rd region. After all, they managed to come even to the 2nd region. Enjoy new stories from Novelbin.com. Whether it was the student teams, the withered forest, or the ghost whiskers of remnant visage, none belonged to the Tranquil Domain, yet the ghost whiskers of remnant visage chose it as the place to strike. They probably also understood that the Jiuzhou Alliance would follow the traces here, heading towards their lair. So they didn't choose to directly take people to their own nests, but instead, struck from a distance. Once they captured someone, they would immediately withdraw the projection, making tracking impossible. We've asked the 2 teams that didn't enter the withered forest. At that time, they encountered each other, and due to fighting over a desolate beast, both sides had injuries and directly called a referee. I think it's probably because of the referee they managed to escape, Elder Luo said. Combining everyone's statements and experiences, roughly analyzing the timeline, Elder Luo guessed the ins and outs of the matter. The specific process should be: the ghost whiskers of remnant visage wanted to capture martial artists for some purpose that's not entirely certain yet, but it's definitely targeting the students this time. Through consuming the brains of other desolate beasts, they confirmed one thing from the memories. All student teams needed to hunt down specific desolate beasts. And in this mission, the landmine dragon in the Sea of Lightning is the target for all teams, which means to kill the landmine dragon, one has to go to the Sea of Lightning. So they set up a very powerful teleportation array on the inevitable path through the Thunder Sea. This kind of array wouldn't be noticed by those at the Meridian opening stage, but it would be discovered by individuals at the God refining stage. There were God refining judges patrolling that area, and powerful martial artists were all nearby. A moment's inattention could easily lead to the judges detecting something amiss and then ending the contest, at which point their plan would fall through completely. Thus, the ghost mustache of remnant visage didn't directly target any particular student team, but instead sought to lure more students to the withered forest before making a move. After all 7 teams entered the withered forest, the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage was about to go after the student teams from Shujo University and Yujo University. However, it discovered that both student teams were already engaged in a fierce battle over a black fish lion listed in their task, which led them to call upon the judges for help. The location of their conflict was near the teleportation site and just happened to alert the judges to the withered forest. The God-refining judges could perceive the teleportation points and prepared to investigate in the withered forest. The ghost mustache of Remnant Visage made a snap decision, abandoning both teams, and immediately erased the teleportation point, initiating a monster tide to cover those traces. The eruption of the monster tide finally clued in the Alliance that something was amiss. They grappled with the tide while immediately dispatching personnel to search in all directions. The rest of the events probably are also clear. What we still can't understand, Xiang Beifei said, is why those ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage wanted to capture us. Logically speaking, if they were looking for bodies to parasitize, they shouldn't have taken such a massive risk. This was something everyone found puzzling. The ghost mustaches of Remnant Visage were so cautious and rarely confronted powerful humans directly. They didn't need to take such risks to find bodies to parasitize. To put it bluntly, countless martial artists entered the otherworldly wilderness every day. Since they could appear in the city of the old days, finding these people would be an easy task for them. But this time, they made the strange choice to act under the watchful eyes of so many experts, which was highly abnormal. Some have speculated that they can only parasitize higher-level martial artists, which is why they targeted SR and SSR students, but I have refuted that, Yi Changfeng said. Back in the city of the old days, they could even parasitize an infant. Moreover, regarding the pioneer Shi Renmei, the Alliance had also gleaned some information. He had only been an S-level awakener, not the so-called SR. Could it be that SR and SSR awakeners are more suitable for parasitism? After all, their systems are more advanced, they cultivate quickly, and their physical condition is much stronger than that of ordinary people. Xiang Beifei asked. Yi Changfeng nodded slightly. That is also a possibility. Elder Luo, munching on melon seeds, gazed into the distance at the rustling tree leaves and after a long pause, slowly said, "Whatever the reason, it seems we'll have to increase our vigilance. There are many types of desolate beasts, and almost every year a new species is discovered, which is then catalogued to enrich the archives of Jojo. But most newly discovered desolate beasts aren't too powerful and are relatively manageable. However, the ghostly visage can be considered the most mysterious and intelligent type of desolate beast encountered in many years. Prior records of them were but few and far between." Yi Changfeng asked, "By the way, do those tree people have a name? The Alliance has asked me to write another paper, because I supplemented the last paper on ghostly visage. This time, with the appearance of both ghostly visage and the tree people together, they think there might be some connection and have specifically requested an article from me. About the tree people, they are also a newly discovered species of desolate beast from this event, vaguely described by those students. However, their understanding is limited, as the whole time was spent escaping for their lives. Take a step too slow and you are gone. So far, all that is known about the tree people is that they can absorb spiritual power." Yi Changfeng then looked at Xiang Beifei and said, "Since you've directly confronted the tree people, what do you propose to name them? Since it was Xiang Beifei who casually named the ghostly visage last time, and this incident involved him once again, Yi Changfeng decided to give Xiang Beifei another chance to name them. "Isn't tree people quite appropriate?" Xiang Beifei said. "The name tree people has already been taken by another desolate beast," Yi Changfeng said. "Oh right, I almost forgot that," Xiang Beifei remembered. The Jojo Alliance often conducts official naming of various desolate beasts in their archive, and anyone who can provide compelling information gets to officially name the beast. The tree people, in a strict sense, are a common type of desolate beast. They are similar to primitive monkeys with the strength of the meridian opening stage. They usually live on trees, deriving power from them, and possess formidable combat capabilities within the forest. But they can only operate on trees. If they depart from the trees even for a short period, they die, which also constitutes their weakness. This desolate beast originally was to be called Tree Ape, but since Tree Ape had been assigned to another kind of desolate beast, this ape-like desolate beast was named Tree Person, which has become a consensus. Experienced pioneers, as soon as they hear Tree Person, naturally think of this kind of ape and understand how to deal with it. However, it's clear that the Tree Person encountered in the withered forest this time is entirely different from the ape-like Tree Person. Since Yi Changfeng was asked to write a paper on this kind of desolate beast, he naturally couldn't name it Tree Person again. Otherwise, it would mislead the pioneers. I remember their voices. My first impression, they emitted a U sound and also a meng, and they only have these 2 syllables, so let's temporarily call them Yu Meng, Xiang Beifei said. Xiang Beifei recalled the situation at that time, considering that most of the beast naming is based on the characteristics of the desolate beast, as this makes it easier to identify. For example, Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage was initially described as Screaming Monster, Crybaby, SOS Beast, and so on, but that was because the ghost mustache mimics people's appearance before death, so different people have different names for it, and in the end, Xiang Beifei unified the name to Ghost Mustache of Remnant Visage, which is quite apt. Before they can learn more about the Tree Person of the withered forest, they will use the vocal characteristics as a stand-in so that the pioneers can immediately recognize the desolate beast by its voice. As for the future, if more special abilities are discovered, the name can be changed then. Yi Changfeng then asked, "You're determining the name of the desolate beast based on its calls. Have you considered which 2 characters to use for it?" "Which 2 characters?" Xiang Beifei was still contemplating. Enjoy exclusive content from Novelbin.com. Because Yu Meng was just a phonetic placeholder for the Tree Person, determined by the sound they made. He hadn't yet really thought about how to write the term Yu Meng. To write it as again cute, again fierce, or sleepwalking, cute friend, all seem possible. Surely he couldn't fix their name as oil braised or throttle, right? But he still casually chose a word that seemed appropriate. Xiang Beifei extended his index finger, and a flame burst from his fingertip. Then he wrote 2 characters in the air. Just this Yu Meng then. These 2 characters were the first ones he thought of, or perhaps one could say they popped out from his subconscious, so he just directly used them. Yi Changfeng nodded slightly and said, "This name is not bad. What does Elder Luo think?" However, at this moment Elder Luo suddenly froze. Yu Meng. He looked at the 2 burning characters in the air in surprise. Elder Luo stopped cracking his sunflower seeds and looked at Xiang Beifei in shock, saying, "You didn't tell me the Tree Person of the withered forest sounded like this?" Xiang Beifei said, "Others mentioned it, so I didn't say anything. When the Tree Persons were chasing them, they were blindly shouting Meng and you. Others also heard it. At that time, Ma Ziqian imitated the calls of these desolate beasts for everyone to hear. When he imitated, he started with the Meng sound, then the U sound. The Tree Person spoke only these 2 monosyllables. The order didn't make much difference, so Xiang Beifei didn't say much. Yu Meng. How can it be such a coincidence? Both using this term. Elder Luo looked at Xiang Beifei as if recalling something, murmuring to himself. "Have you heard of Yu Meng before, Elder?" Xiang Beifei asked, puzzled. Elder Luo didn't answer, but muttered to himself, "Last time only a few of you left the withered forest. The others all got lost. If it's like this, doesn't that mean?" He looked quite astonished. Xiang Beifei was still pondering why Elder Luo had such a big reaction to the term Meng. But then Elder Luo carefully asked, "At that time were you headed towards the north, Beifei?" Xiang Beifei was stunned for a long time upon hearing this question. Because this question was quite ambiguous, for a brief instant, he even considered the possibility, was Elder Luo asking about his identity? Yi Changfeng, standing beside him, was also baffled as he looked at Elder Luo, thinking that the elder might have developed senile dementia. Why suddenly ask, "Are you Xiang Beifei?" Like that. If this lad isn't Xiang Beifei, could he possibly be called Mo Beifei? Or could he be possessed by the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage? Yi Changfeng adjusted his glasses, and the Long Yuan sword floated out again. He made a point of having the Long Yuan sword scan Xiang Beifei once more, seriously and earnestly. Nothing was detected. Well, then that's settled. It must indeed be Xiang Beifei himself. Because nothing was apparent, that's precisely why it was evident. It was the same feeling he had when he first met Xiang Beifei. Yi Changfeng adjusted his glasses and reminded, he should indeed be the real Xiang Beifei. You certainly can't misjudge, can you? He had always believed that Xiang Beifei possessed the ability to shield himself from others' prying eyes. It was highly likely that SR Awakener Xiang Tianqing was protecting him. As an SR sword cultivator himself, it was only natural to be unable to spy on him. Only then did Elder Luo realize there was ambiguity in his words and said, I didn't mean that. I'm asking, were you headed north when you left the ancient forest? Oh, going north. Only then did Yi Changfeng realize his misunderstanding, and he coughed awkwardly. However, he quickly turned to look at Xiang Beifei with surprise. Xiang Beifei came back to his senses, looking at Elder Luo with confusion. Elder Luo actually knew about this? He thought back to that inexplicable call, which seemed like it was guiding him. At that time, the leaves of the trees all turned in one direction, and deep within him, he sensed the character North. Xiang Beifei inquired, have you, Elder, visited the ancient forest? Elder Luo shook his head. No. Then how come? You first answer my question, are you heading north? Pressed Elder Luo urgently. Xiang Beifei hesitated, then nodded, yes. They had been running for a long time with no way to leave, but just by heading north for a while, less than 10 minutes, they were out. The path to the north was the correct one. Indeed. Elder Luo seemed to recall something and let out a slight sigh. What on earth is going on? Do you, Elder, know something? Xiang Beifei had always been clueless about what that voice meant. Talking about this matter would be a long story, Elder Luo said. He looked at Xiang Beifei with a complex gaze. After a while, he began to speak slowly. When you named that tree creature Ameng, I suddenly realized what this desolate beast truly signifies. What does it signify? Xiang Beifei asked, puzzled. The first one to mention the Yumeng desolate beast was not you, but your father, Xiang Tianqing. Him? Xiang Beifei was somewhat surprised. In Elder Luo's hand, a rather unimpressive stone appeared, no larger than half a finger, pitted and looking as if it had been eroded by something, shattered in many places. Pioneers, when carrying out missions in the wilderness, always record their movements, like a black box, so that if something happens, it is easier for others to search for them. Elder Luo looked at the stone in his hand and said with a complicated expression, this is a very special black box, known as the Pioneer Stone. The limitation on black boxes is significant. In the outer domain's desolate lands, starting from the third danger zone, one cannot use system items as black boxes, because system items are time-limited, and over time their effects diminish and are easily sniffed out by powerful desolate beasts. Nor can one use electronic devices because some desolate beasts can control magnetic fields, like the silent centipede we encountered last time, which can use spiritual power to create magnetic fields that are indistinguishable from real ones to deal with people, and naturally can also detect electronic devices. But Pioneer Stone is a very special kind of stone, created by scientists in the Alliance. You only need to hold the stone, and you can turn your thoughts into subtle traces left on the stone, which desolate beasts cannot detect because it does not belong to system items and has no fluctuations. When your father went missing, I personally searched the area for a full 2 months. I didn't find the person, but fortunately, everything he knew was taught by me. I knew how he would conceal things by using the terrain, or perhaps, knowing that I understood him and would come searching, he used the method I taught to hide the Pioneer Stone. Everything Xiang Tianqing knew about surviving in the outer domain's desolate lands was taught by Elder Luo. So Elder Luo was very clear about how to use the terrain to hide clues at critical moments. Master and disciple had a tacit understanding. Unfortunately, when I found the cave, the Pioneer Stone had been corroded by a powerful desolate beast, broken in half, and I was only able to salvage this small part. Elder Luo gently rolled the Pioneer Stone in his palm, and several disjointed lines of text appeared, fuzzy as if condensed from gas. The Pioneer Stone can imprint the thoughts present in the user's mind at the time, which means whatever he wanted to leave behind is expressed directly in the text he acknowledged. I have imprinted all the thoughts, which are in this notebook, but many parts are missing, including the mention of the term among. He then took out a notebook, turned to a certain page and handed it to Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei took the notebook, which was very new, a most ordinary notebook, filled with text imprinted from the pioneer stone. Even the handwriting belonged to Xiang Tianqing, not Elder Luo. The Yumeng creatures are quite peculiar. I don't even want to classify them as desolate beasts because they have their own way of living, although fate has been somewhat rough on them. It is very difficult to communicate with the Yumeng, but I think I have succeeded. The West seems to be the chains of their fate, binding them here. The Yumeng told me where to find the answers I seek, but I must first leave the forest. They said to just fly all the way north. It's magical because that's the name of my son, Xiang Beifei, taken by his grandfather. The damage to the pioneer stone was severe, with many pits on it, and the imprinted text was disjointed, unable to be read continuously. Experience tales at Novelbin.com. However, the remaining thoughts were still clearly expressible in text. Are you sure these words are his? Xiang Beifei looked at Elder Luo with surprise. Yes, the pioneer stone is very rare, kind of like a very convenient form of text recording. Whatever you think in your mind will be left behind, and then presented in words. The Yumeng you chose, and his Yumeng, are the same. Just like father and son. Elder Luo sighed lightly again. If it weren't for Xiang Beifei thinking of naming the tree people Yumeng, he would not even have connected the tree people of the withered forest with the Yumeng mentioned on Xiang Tianqing's pioneer stone. Xiang Beifei looked at the words and fell silent. I've been researching these words for many years, trying to figure out what that boy was investigating. But it's no use. The pioneer stone is too badly damaged. A lot of key information is missing, and I'm not even clear about what he meant by Yumeng without much description. Until you just now named that tree person, I realized this point. Xiang Beifei asked, whether the Yumeng of the withered forest or the ghost mustache of remnant visage, they are desolate beasts from the domain. Does Elder Luo mean that my dad had encountered these Yumeng before? No evidence. Elder Luo cautioned Xiang Beifei. He had not given the imprinted notebook to Xiang Beifei previously because he was still young and was concerned he might rush into the outer domain's desolate lands in search of his father. Xiang Beifei said, but I remember reading that the pioneer stone has a very strong hardness, difficult to damage, and desolate beasts of God refining strength would not be able to harm it, which means this desolate beast must be at least. He stopped there, his brow slightly furrowed. Elder Luo and Yi Changfeng exchanged glances, clearly having considered this issue before. Only desolate beasts above the God-refining level could damage the pioneering stones. Elder Luo and Yi Changfeng both remained silent, not stating it explicitly, but Xiang Beifei had already understood. Before he went missing, what was his cultivation level? Xiang Beifei asked again. He was an excellent martial artist, very powerful. Although he was only at SR, he could completely handle an SSR just like you today, Elder Luo said. Yi Changfeng sighed slightly. Do you know why you, an N level this year, were so outstanding in the new student competition, but no other schools have questioned you? It's because 20 years ago, in the new student competition, Xiang Tianqing, who was at SR level, also dominated the SSRs from other schools. As long as they investigated your background and found out you're the son of Xiang Tianqing, and understood who Xiang Tianqing was, they would probably be reassured. Like father, like son, Elder Luo said. SR-level awakeners, more formidable than their contemporaries at SSR or even UR, are rare, but they do exist. The one munching on sunflower seeds right now is one of them. But he still had an accident, Xiang Beifei said. You still haven't answered my question. What was his cultivation level? Elder Luo was silent for a moment and then shook his head. He never mentioned it to me. After graduation, he left the school. Although he occasionally came back to visit me, it was just to chat. Later, there was a year when I couldn't contact him at all. But definitely more than God refining, Yi Changfeng said. More than God refining. Such a powerful person still had an accident in the northern district of the essential domain? What exactly does the essential domain represent? Xiang Beifei looked at the words in the diary. The handwriting of Xiang Tianqing was both familiar and strange to him. It seems like their destiny's shackle. The missing words in front could be, this thing. It must surely refer to Yumeng. So the reason Yumeng trees can switch between tree and humanoid forms, is it bound by something? Is it that piece of black wood? But the black wood had already been devoured by Xiang Beifei's spirit-gathering book. Yet Yumeng later still reverted to a tree. If that piece of black wood were the shackles of fate, it wouldn't make sense. Although the power of that piece of black wood could suppress Xiang Beifei and his companions, it was at most equivalent to the god-refining level. If it truly were the shackles of destiny, why didn't Xiang Tianqing break it? Xiang Beifei knew that his SR-level father was no ordinary person. Resisting that piece of black wood seemed not too difficult. Or maybe, the shackle is called something west. Xiang Beifei sat on a chair by the lake, opened the diary, and read through it line by line, thoroughly reviewing the text Elder Luo had printed. When we walked past that place, the bones made a strange noise. This path is very dangerous, we can feel it, but I must seek the answer. July 20th. The situation was too perilous, we barely survived. Lien saw them. She believes deeply. We got lost, not knowing which way to go. But Lien made a decision to head north, Beifei, because our son's name is Xiang Beifei. At such a moment, we decided to entrust our fates to our son. It may seem silly, but perhaps, in the grand scheme of things, this is an answer. Upon reading this passage, Xiang Beifei looked up at Elder Luo, surprised. They went north. Lien, Xiang Beifei's mother, her full name is Yu Tinglian, which means fish listening to the lotus. Xiang Beifei's impression of his own mother, like that of Xiang Tianqing, was also very vague. If Xiang Tianqing left this journal, was it intended for those who would come looking for them? Then, wouldn't it mean that one only needed to travel north from where the journal was discovered? He had never imagined that his own name would be the clue to finding those two. After a while, Elder Luo sighed. I've been there, always following the direction indicated by the journal, flying northward. But to no avail. Either the region is too bizarre or I flew for 2 days and ended up back where I started. Xiang Beifei was silent. What exactly had happened to his parents? Where had they gone when they flew north? Or, as mentioned by the Frontier Stone, was the situation too dangerous and they had already... Elder Luo, seeming to perceive Xiang Beifei's thoughts, said, I believe they are still alive. He had always believed so. Because Elder Luo possessed an intuition far beyond ordinary people, he could allocate all system points to intuition. In his eyes, his disciple, Xiang Tianqing, was no ordinary person. Originally, Xiang Tianqing was a genius capable of capturing various SSRs and beating them. Therefore, when Xiang Tianqing's son, Xiang Beifei, exhibited all sorts of incredible talents, Elder Luo was shocked yet able to accept it. Xiang Beifei remained silent and turned to the next page, where the imprinted handwriting was fairly complete. Miss my son. He is only 14, still at a rebellious age. Every time we come home he doesn't want to talk to us, always holding a grudge against us. Our son doesn't want to get close, usually taciturn, listening to no one except his grandfather. Before we left home this time, the last thing he said to us was shouting for us not to come back. I am very sad, and Lien is also very sad. Alas, to reach the point where a son doesn't want his parents to come home, I think we are probably the most failed parents in the world. But we must seek this answer, it's very important. It not only concerns us but also... The text on this page broke off here, and there was nothing written beyond this point. Shouting for you not to come back? Xiang Beifei felt a surge of emotion as he read this sentence. Suddenly, he remembered that vigilant boy. The boy who had stood by the window, watching for 4 years. Once he realized his parents were missing. The last thing he had said to his parents before losing them was to tell them not to come back. Apparently, the boy's parents thought he was at a rebellious age. They thought the last thing he wanted was to see them. But had they ever carefully considered why the silent boy chose to rebel? Each time his parents would come home, They would leave hastily after just 2 days, and the duration of their absence was even longer than the time spent at home. When the parents left, the boy could only stand by the window, silently watching their retreating figures as their shadows stretched longer and longer in the sunset, disappearing into the horizon. As parents, they never realized it. What does the word rebellious really mean? It is only when one deeply desires something that they pretend to reject it. That was what rebellion was. Did they understand that when the boy shouted for them to leave, he actually desperately wanted them to stay? That proud boy, never wanting to be treated as a child, scorned to reveal his emotions to his parents because he viewed it as childish behavior. Opposing his parents was his proof of maturity. But deep within the teenager's heart, there was also a longing of his own. Like the young couple at sunset, holding their son's small hand, the son, supported by his parents' arms, swung cheerfully on a swing between them. The sunlight was warm. The child's laughter was brilliant. That image was perpetually fixed in the youth's mind. Only in his mind. Every time his parents left, it felt as if that image was being torn apart. The youth hated that feeling. So he shouted angrily, "Don't ever come back!" He had never imagined that those words would become reality. They truly never came back. When the youth received the news, it struck him like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. From then on, he spent every night by the window watching the end of the street. Full of regret and torment, he continued this vigil for 4 years. Xiang Beifei remained silent. The young man had kept watch until he went mentally unstable and suddenly died in an examination hall. But that intense obsession never faded away. Perhaps only when the misunderstanding was erased would that obsession disappear. "May I borrow this diary?" Xiang Beifei asked. Elder Luo nodded slightly. "Take it. Take the pioneering stone as well. After all, it is your father's legacy and should belong to you. But you must promise me, if you find any clues, don't act alone. Consult with me." He had originally planned to wait until Xiang Beifei reached the god-refining stage before giving it to him, ensuring that even if Xiang Beifei secretly ventured into the essential domain, he would have the power to protect himself. However, this encounter made Elder Luo understand that Xiang Beifei was not just a reckless child. He had his own judgment. "I don't know what they're doing, but you've grown up and you should understand some things. They didn't want to leave home. They are pioneers with their own duties," Elder Luo said to Xiang Beifei as he looked at that page of the diary. He had read the entire contents of the diary and knew about the previous conflicts between Xiang Beifei and his parents. Everyone has their youthful follies. Now, Xiang Beifei was an adult, and Elder Luo saw a significant change in his personality, at least much more composed than before. "I understand." Xiang Beifei looked at those words and fell into deep thought. For a while, no one spoke again. The leaves in the woods rustled, and the birds chirped contentedly. After a long pause, Xiang Beifei stood up. He walked towards the edge of the woods, but halfway there he stopped. "Thank you," Xiang Beifei said. Elder Luo was taken aback, then shook his head. "I only did what I could. I understand, but still thank you." Xiang Beifei still felt immense gratitude towards Elder Luo. Regardless of the reason, he respected such an elder. "You're going to find them, aren't you?" Elder Luo asked. "Yes. But god-refining stage. That's good." Elder Luo nodded slightly. "Not being rash, that's a good thing. I don't know what answers he is looking for, but once your cultivation improves, I will accompany you to find the answers you seek," Elder Luo said, looking at Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei turned around and looked at Elder Luo. "Who let you all be my foolish disciples? I've lived too leisurely, not having many disciples, but since I've taken disciples, I must bear this responsibility. I can't just let you fend for yourselves." Elder Luo smiled, stretched lazily, and said, "Besides, I also want to know the answer." His last trip north had taken 2 months without finding them, but perhaps Xiang Beifei might have a way? So many years had passed, and there had been no news from the Xiang Tianxing couple. Many thought they were more likely dead than alive, but he always had that intuition. Whether dead or alive, they needed closure. The essential domain was too dangerous, but once Xiang Beifei attained the God-refining stage, he would take him there. Then I will also take a trip there. Yi Changfeng was, of course, aware of this, being the most composed person in the Leisure Clouds and Wild Crane's family. But still, he had to take care of his own. Just don't know how long it will take you to reach the God-refining stage, Yi Changfeng said. As soon as possible. Xiang Beifei spoke, then turned and left the woods. That piece of black wood on the withered forest's mountain had some connection to his own constellation, and whatever the reason, he had to go back to the withered forest once more. He knew what his next goal was: to cultivate continuously until he had the power to travel to that place, to investigate what exactly those two were doing among the pioneers, and then head north. The sky was very blue, with white clouds drifting by occasionally. By the end of January, winter break was drawing near. The students at Liangzhou University had been incredibly busy lately, with final exams representing a significant hurdle for them. The final exams for martial arts students at elite universities were not something they could pass by simply filling out a few test papers. They had to complete practical assessments in various simulated classes. The assessment requirements for each course were very high. For example, in Introduction to Jiuzhou Alliance Defense, as the person setting the exam, Professor Guo required every student to set up a 30-meter-long isolation zone, according to what they had learned. Professor Guo would directly release 50 desolate beasts at the early stage of Qi controlling, letting these beasts charge towards the student's isolation zone to see how many of the 50 would survive. If one survived, 2 points would be deducted. If all the beasts survived after passing through the isolation zone, then the student would score 0 for that course. To pass, the isolation zone must kill at least 30 early-stage Qi-controlling desolate beasts. When everyone received these assessment details, they all complained bitterly. On the surface, it seemed that they were only early-stage Qi-controlling desolate beasts, which appeared as if everyone could kill one with a single punch, but the assessment wasn't about killing the beasts with one's hands. Instead, it was about using traps to do the killing. This caused everyone a lot of headaches. Professor, which specific desolate beasts will be charging towards the isolation zone? The final exam outline should be defined at least. Some students hoped Professor Guo could indicate the key points for the exam. Once the specific types of desolate beasts were determined, students could set traps specifically for them, increasing the likelihood of killing the beasts. However, the strict Professor Guo threw cold water on their hopes. You are all martial arts students. When a beast tide erupts, any desolate beast might charge your isolation zone, not just a few specific ones. If I point out the key areas today, and a real beast tide erupts tomorrow, where will you look for key points then? But there are just too many types of early-stage Qi-controlling desolate beasts, and surely some traps would end up being a waste. The students pressed on, not ready to give up. Professor Guo then played a video. This is Xiang Beifei's final assessment. The requirement I set for him was a 50-meter isolation zone with 100 late-stage Qi-controlling desolate beasts. 10 points would be deducted for every beast that survived. The video showed a swampy area, outside the boundaries of the wasteland, shrouded in a hazy mist. Soon, a group of ferocious desolate beasts that made everyone's hearts tremble were driven into this swamp. Following that, boom, 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 explosions, whizzing sounds, sonic booms, ice blasts, water bullets, spatial restraints, various formations were launched, accurately ensnaring their respective desolate beasts and outright killing them. Blood spattered everywhere, and limbs flew in all directions. The scene was extremely gory. In just a short moment, 100 late-stage Qi-controlling desolate beasts were completely slaughtered by the various traps. Professor Guo, pleased, pressed the pause button on the video, scanning over everyone before his gaze settled on Xiang Beifei, who was sitting and resting his chin on his hand, and then said, "Full marks." Everyone looked at each other, speechless. The assessment Professor Guo had set for Xiang Beifei required dealing with 100 late-stage Qi-controlling desolate beasts, with 10 points deducted for each one that survived. In other words, if more than 4 beasts survived, Xiang Beifei would fail. Read new chapters at novelbin.com. However, they were only tasked with dealing with 50 early-stage Qi-controlling desolate beasts, with 2 points deducted for each survival, allowing them to pass even if 20 survived. Compared like this, everyone was left at a loss for words. You think that's all there was to it? I then rushed over another 100 late-stage chi-controlling desolate beasts. They went through his set-up isolation zone, the second wave of beasts. Professor Guo played the video again, and Xiang Beifei's isolation zone was very thoroughly set up. Many traps weren't one-time use. They continued to function after killing the first wave of desolate beasts, quickly slaying the second wave as well. There was a single survivor from the third wave of desolate beasts, and it wasn't until the fourth wave that 4 beasts survived. That is to say, an isolation zone set up by Xiang Beifei blocked 4 waves of different types of desolate beasts. Nobody had any rebuttals anymore because the professors only required them to block 1 wave, and many people's traps couldn't even hold off the second one. In other subjects, people might still claim Xiang Beifei succeeded due to his high cultivation level, but for the defense class assessment, this explanation no longer held water. That was because Xiang Beifei hadn't personally engaged in killing. He had purely used traps. These traps they should have been able to master as well. With nothing to say, without comparison, there wouldn't be any hurt, but Xiang Beifei's assessment was so much harder than theirs. What could they possibly complain about? They could only return dejectedly to prepare for the exam. After class, Xiang Beifei continued to study his diary. He had had the diary for 10 days now, and he would take it out every day, carefully pondering the fragmented sentences written in it, thinking about his own matters. Xiang Beifei had always wanted to find clues from his father's diary, the most pressing issue being what Xiang Tianxing was searching for. What answer was he trying to find? Did he act according to his own will, or did he follow the mission arranged by the Alliance? Still thinking about that matter? Professor Guo approached and asked. Professor. Xiang Beifei closed the diary and greeted him politely. Luo told me everything. I'm very sorry about your father's situation. He was a talented individual just like you. Don't overthink it. Professor Guo sighed. Professor, is there a way to restore a pioneering stone? Xiang Beifei asked. Professor Guo shook his head. The pioneering stone is meant to avoid detection by desolate beasts, so it's not created by system items but from a very special material, which also means that any system-related abilities are ineffective on it. System-related abilities are ineffective on the pioneering stone? Right? Otherwise, many restorative awakeners would have repaired it long ago. Professor Guo nodded, but Xiang Beifei suddenly thought of something. Many system-class abilities were also ineffective on him. Then, of what material was this pioneering stone made? Professor Guo said, All right, don't think too much about it. What you should do now is make good use of your talent to train and improve your cultivation level. It's better to pursue this matter afterward. You've been through a lot this semester. It's time to go home and rest for a while. When do you plan on going home? I'll go home after the anatomy class exam. Xiang Beifei said this and slightly furrowed his eyebrows. Come to think of it, he had almost forgotten about the teacher of the Desolate Beast Cognition and Anatomy course. That Su Yang, who had released the mutant hounds to attack him just days after his awakening system had activated. Xiang Beifei still hadn't figured out Su Yang's intentions. Was Su Yang's attempt to probe him because of Xiang Tianxing? Did he know what his father had done in the extraterritorial desolate wilderness? All the exams were conducted separately, with a few days in between for everyone to cram at the last minute. What everyone cared most about were the 4 required courses, because if you failed an elective you could simply take another one, but failing a required course meant a make-up exam. System analysis and processing was very simple for him. The assessment still involved watching videos of several criminals and then determining what their systems were based on their behavior. To Xiang Beifei, such an assessment was like taking an open-book test. He didn't have to guess. The system interface was clearly displayed, even more accurate than the answer key. Because the examiners might not even know precisely what systems the criminals had, they only provided a reference type which was nonetheless quite close to the mark. As for Yi Chongfeng's simulation of cultivated domain, desolate wilderness, he had set up a very targeted environment in the simulation room, analogous to the situation in cultivated domain. The final assessment required finding a specific hidden desolate beast in these dangerous environments, killing it, and processing it into edible meat products. Students were also required to eat the meat they had processed themselves. Most desolate beasts were toxic, so to eat them, it was necessary to learn how to process their toxins. Of course, Yi Changfeng wouldn't choose a desolate beast that would directly poison the students to death. He chose a chi-controlling mid-stage desolate beast with a multicolored face. If one didn't handle the toxins properly after killing it, eating it would result in multicolored spots on one's face. After that, it was simple. Yi Changfeng would take an automated scanner to measure. As long as the spots on the face were larger than 2 centimeters in diameter, points would be deducted. The number of points deducted depended on the color. Red would cost 1 point, while purple would cost 7 points, and so forth. If the spot's diameter was longer than 5 centimeters, the points deducted would be doubled. To get full marks, one's face couldn't have any spots. So when his course's assessment ended, the expressions of the entire class were colorfully diverse. The assessment was carried out collectively, with all the first-year students being assessed together. Most people were clumsy, and while processing the meat of the multicolored-faced desolate beast, they did not clean the toxins thoroughly and emerged with large colorful patches on their faces. Long Guoqing's entire nose had turned red, resembling a bulbous nose from excessive drinking, and there was a bruised patch under his left eye, making it appear as if he had been punched. He looked rather annoyed, his usual cool image ruined in an instant. Young Master Long, that style looks really cool. Ma Ziqian laughed unabashedly. Get lost. Long Guoqing cursed fiercely. Ma Ziqian only had a yellow spot and a purple spot on his face, the size of a fingernail, with a diameter no larger than 2 centimeters. This level of toxin wasn't too severe and was within acceptable limits. He was feeling quite smug when Yi Changfeng, without even lifting his eyes, said, Ma Ziqian, 10 points off. Ma Ziqian was dumbfounded on the spot. Teacher, the yellow spot was only 1.986 centimeters in diameter when scanned with the ruler just now, Ma Ziqian argued, holding a mirror. Yi Changfeng looked at him indifferently and said, I personally took you to the special training in the outer domain of cultivated domain. You've learned more than the other students and still managed to get poisoned. Aren't you ashamed? Ma Ziqian immediately lost his spirits. Long Guoqing sneered. Serves you right. You lose 18 points. Yi Changfeng glanced at Long Guoqing. Long Guoqing was stunned and said, 18 points? He only had one red spot larger than 5 centimeters, but the red color was the lightest in terms of poisoning. Even doubling it would only make it 2 points. Together with a green spot less than 5 centimeters in diameter, it would only add up to a deduction of 5 points, not 18. With such a large area rounded up, it's triple deduction. Having enjoyed special training, you must adhere to special rules. Didn't you see the exam instructions? Yi Changfeng pointed to the exam regulations. Discover hidden stories at Novelbin.com. It was written there. The final interpretation right of the exam rules belongs to the examiner, who can adjust the scoring rules according to the special circumstances of the students. Long Guoqing was rendered speechless. Both Xiang Beifei and Li Zimu dealt with the toxins perfectly. There were no spots on their faces. Meanwhile, Shi Qiao was squatting on the ground, covering her face, too ashamed to raise her head. Xiang Beifei, stay away. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Woo woo woo. I'm disfigured. Shi Qiao covered her face tightly, too embarrassed to show her face to anyone. It's all right, the toxin will disappear automatically in 2 hours. You haven't been scored yet, Xiang Beifei consoled. Ma Ziqian came over and whispered, Shi Qiao, don't you have healing abilities? You could have detoxified in secret, right? Without Mr. Ye's cultivation level, I can't detoxify. He specially treated the toxins of the desolate beasts to prevent cheating, Li Zimu explained from the side. Shi Qiao still covered her face, shaking her head desperately. This is too embarrassing. This is too embarrassing. Ma Ziqian said seriously, Shi Qiao, be brave. We're all professionally trained. What kind of storm haven't we seen? Show us just how disfigured you are. Shi Qiao sadly said, You guys won't laugh at me. We won't, said Yi Changfeng. Shi Qiao hesitated for a long time before finally moving her hand away to reveal her face. Everyone was shocked. Shi Qiao had 2 huge black circles under her eyes, and her whole face was striped in swirls, just like a mosquito coil, with black lines spreading all the way up to the center of her forehead, where a red spot appeared, making it seem like a burning mosquito coil. Did you stamp a mosquito coil on your face? Ma Ziqian was the first to burst into laughter. The people around turned to look at Shi Qiao, and upon seeing this peculiar appearance, couldn't help but let out laughs. Ma Ziqian, didn't you all agree not to laugh? Shi Qiao said, covering her face in embarrassment. Find adventures on Novelbin.com. We've had professional training. No matter how funny it is, we won't laugh unless we can't help it. Ha ha ha. Ma Ziqian said while laughing. Shi Qiao kept her face covered, sneaking peeks at Xiang Beifei through the gaps between her fingers and noticing that Xiang Beifei was also smiling slightly, which made her face turn even redder. Xiang Beifei is laughing too, she said, annoyed. You look quite cute like this, Xiang Beifei said. Shi Qiao blinked, paused, and asked doubtfully, Really? MHM, Xiang Beifei replied. He thinks I'm cute. Shi Qiao happily lowered her hands, seemingly less concerned about her mosquito coil face. Speaking of which, is this from a severe poisoning? Long Guoqing exclaimed in surprise, because the toxin from the desolate beast with the colorful face didn't produce black patches, just 7 colors. You must have eaten the egg drop soup from the cafeteria this morning. That egg came from a mosquito coil spider, and just a trace of the toxin in your body triggered the reaction. Yi Changfeng pinpointed the source, then carefully determined the amount of toxins remaining in Shi Qiao's body, deducting 7 points from her score. The final course assessment was Recognition and Dissection of Desolate Beasts. It's a mandatory course that studies various knowledge about desolate beasts, requiring every martial artist to dissect and learn how various organs like fangs, venom sacs, and corrosive fluids function and how they enable the use of various abilities. For example, the triangular thunderkite, the study focuses on why it can shoot lightning from its eyes. It has an organ called an electric sac connected to the eyes. This course teaches the structure of the electric sac and how to remove it and attach it to a device, allowing everyone to wield the lightning power of the triangular thunderkite, turning them into an electro-knight. Of course, if you want to study the specific modification techniques, you'll need to take an elective course related to system dark technology. Xiang Beifei's understanding of desolate beasts was essentially unmatched. He had killed more desolate beasts thus far than the total number all his classmates combined had killed. For this course's final assessment, I will test you on the dissection of a claw-tailed monkey. I don't expect you to be able to transplant the tail of a claw-tailed monkey onto a 3-souls desolate snake and have it still move. You just need to completely remove the tail of the claw-tailed monkey, then stimulate its nerves with a needle to make it grab a stick. At the end of the last class, Su Yang announced the content of the assessment to the whole class. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. This assessment was relatively easy compared to others. The claw-tailed monkey had very strong attacking abilities, but the desolate beast did not need them to kill it as it was already dead. They just had to sever the tail and then wrap the dissecting needle with spiritual power to simulate controlling the monkey's tail to pass the assessment. Anyone who glanced at the book a little and could cultivate spiritual power could pass. Not to mention grabbing a stick, even making the tail form a heart shape was possible. Su Yang was probably the teacher most liked by the students because his course assessments were very easy. He even marked the key points, and everyone left the dissection room overjoyed. Nicely done. As Xiang Beifei was packing up the dissection tools and preparing to leave the classroom, Su Yang came over and said to Xiang Beifei with a smile. Thank you, Xiang Beifei said as he cleaned the dissecting tools, putting them all back in their places. But I thought you would do even better, like being able to move the tail without touching it with the dissecting needle, Su Yang said with a smile on his face. I just followed the teacher's instructions, Xiang Beifei said politely. That's true. You still performed perfectly compared to everyone else. I'll give you full marks for this course, Su Yang said, giving a thumbs up in appreciation. Thank you. By the way, you're now in the Meridian opening phase. Are you planning to apply for graduation next semester? At the Martial Arts College, the graduation requirements are defined, with R-grade students needing to reach an advanced phase of Qi controlling, and S-grade students needing to reach the Meridian opening phase. But as an N-level Xiang Beifei, it only took half a semester. I don't have plans to graduate yet, Xiang Beifei said. You are the most talented student I have seen apart from SSR level 1s. Actually, there's little need for you to attend classes with other students. Perhaps you can consider applying for a graduation assessment next semester and then work as a teaching assistant at the school. I think many professors would definitely vie for you, Su Yang said with a smile. Xiang Beifei pondered for a moment and said, I'll consider it. Honestly, I'm very interested in desolate beasts and always think of studying them. I feel that as long as the ability is well utilized, even the weakest desolate beast can defeat higher-level desolate beasts. That's the principle, Su Yang nodded slightly. The abilities of desolate beasts, like system awakeners, always counteract each other. As long as their weaknesses are targeted, they can generally be killed with one strike. Teacher, you know more about desolate beasts than anyone else. If I want to pursue a career in desolate beast studies, how should I choose the direction of my studies next? Xiang Beifei asked. A flicker of surprise appeared in Su Yang's eyes. You want to pursue a career in desolate beast studies? I thought you would be a pioneer like your father. Even as a pioneer, one needs to master desolate beast studies first because pioneers have to deal with desolate beasts in the outer wastelands, as you've mentioned in your lectures, haven't you? I feel I still have a lot to learn, and I don't want to blindly engage in the career of a pioneer before I'm fully prepared. That's being responsible for myself, Xiang Beifei said. Indeed, you have considered it thoroughly, Su Yang said. Su Yang agreed with Xiang Beifei's statement, and after a moment, he continued. Because students' talents differ, the school has to consider the learning ability of most students, so the knowledge taught is too broad, and many topics are only superficially covered, broad but not deep. To specialize, one must intern at a dedicated research institution. If you are interested, I suggest you find an opportunity next semester to intern at a desolate beast research company. Xiang Beifei suddenly realized, is that so? Then, teacher, could you recommend an internship company? That's not a problem. I may not claim expertise in other areas, but I do have some capability in the field of desolate beast studies. I've previously worked at a desolate beast research company. If you are willing, I can try to contact them for you, Su Yang said. That would be great. Thank you, teacher, Xiang Beifei said. No need for thanks, I should do what I can. Now you should go back and prepare for the exams of other subjects, Su Yang said. After organizing all the anatomical tools, Xiang Beifei left the classroom. Su Yang waited until Xiang Beifei left the teaching building before he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. What's up? A deep voice came from the other end of the phone. He plans to find an internship with a desolate beast research company next semester. Su Yang simply relayed Xiang Beifei's original words. There was silence on the other end for a moment before he said, Understood. It's an opportunity. I will arrange it well. Su Yang didn't converse much with the person on the other end. He soon hung up the phone and then stared at the exam dissection table used by Xiang Beifei, lost in thought. The next steps should be much easier now, Su Yang murmured to himself. What he didn't see was a little white dog crouching in front of him, baring its teeth. Woof! 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 Xiaohei danced around in front of Xiang Beifei, trying to convey the news he had gathered. Xiang Beifei sat by the flower bed, listening to Xiaohei's description, and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Woof! Xiaohei asked. No need. You've been tracking him for so many days and haven't found out much. He's too cautious. We'll talk again next semester, Xiang Beifei said. Xiaohei was now his super spy. Though lacking in combat strength, his invisibility to others was a significant advantage. Skilled in ambush, eavesdropping, and even fetching deliveries. Unfortunately, Su Yang was very cautious. He hardly showed any slip-ups at school, merely teaching and studying desolate beasts, doing his job without any contact with his backers. Xiaohei had tracked him for days without uncovering anything. It would have to be one step at a time. All the exams had ended, and with the first semester of university coming to a close, Xiang Beifei realized he had been at school for less than half a year. But it seemed like a lot had happened during this half year. As a student who had just started, he had made countless trips to the wilderness outside the domain and even experienced attacks by desolate beasts from the frontier. Such experiences were even more harrowing than what many pioneers had encountered. The school quickly became deserted, as many students couldn't wait to go home after their exams finished. Li Zimu and Long Guoqing had left yesterday, and Xiang Beifei planned to go home tomorrow. Once again, he spread out his journal and closely inspected its contents. The journal repeatedly mentioned that his father went to seek an answer, but what that answer was, Xiang Beifei still hadn't quite figured out. Unfortunately, the Pioneer Stone was too severely damaged, and the information he had gleaned before and after was just that. If only the Pioneer Stone could be repaired with system abilities, he lamented. This was where Xiang Beifei felt regret. Due to its functionality, the Pioneer Stone couldn't respond to system abilities. Otherwise, Elder Luo would have found a way to restore it long ago. After all, there were not a few people in the world with restorative systems, and with their contacts it would be more than enough to find an SSR-grade restorative awakener. Woof! Xiaohei suddenly blinked and barked. Xiang Beifei looked at Xiaohei in surprise and asked, "You didn't know, did you?" Woof woof! A light flashed beneath Xiaohei's feet, and the spirit-gathering book landed in front of it. Pawed the spirit-gathering book, flipping it to the page of the Dou constellation. The Dou constellation was eager to burst forth from the page the moment it was spread out, but Xiaohei smacked it down with a pat of its paw and flipped back a page, landing on the basket constellation. The basket constellation belonged to the late stage of meridian opening and could be unsealed then with only 4 stars, that is, for seals of the late meridian opening stage. Woof! Xiaohei indicated the basket constellation. The God refining stage was too powerful, and its seals were formidable. Xiaohei couldn't perceive it in much detail, but it could vaguely grasp a bit about the constellations of the meridian opening stage. It possesses the ability to repair? Xiang Beifei exclaimed in surprise. Xiaohei first nodded, then shook its head, indicating that it felt this constellation had the ability Xiang Beifei wanted, but it couldn't be completely certain. But if I unseal this constellation now, isn't it also uncontrollable? Xiang Beifei pondered. Woof! Xiaohei suggested it was highly probable. The last time the Dou constellation caused trouble, it had given him a tough time. The Dou constellation belonged to the God refining stage, it had its own consciousness, and it could seek out Xiang Beifei for trouble even after just 2 seals were unlocked. Xiang Beifei was currently only at the early stage of meridian opening, and the next step should be to elevate his cultivation to the mid-stage of meridian opening, first lighting up the tail constellation of the mid-stage, and then waiting until the late stage to light up the basket constellation. Enjoy new stories from NovelBin.com. If he decided to skip the tail constellation and unlock the seals of the late-stage meridian opening, it wasn't impossible, but without the corresponding strength, it would be difficult to suppress such an odd star ability. I have to try first. Considering the basket constellation belonged to the late stage of meridian opening, its seals were weaker than those of the God refining stage's Dou constellation, so it should be easier to control than the Dou constellation. Xiang Beifei had a late-stage meridian opening beast pill that he acquired when he followed Elder Luo to the outskirts of the desolate wasteland. He had provoked that desolate beast and couldn't defeat it, so Elder Luo helped him kill it with a slap, giving him the beast pill. He also had 2 UR-level system items obtained from Zhu Xinjue, which were equivalent to late-stage meridian opening spiritual power crystals. He immediately fused them. The basket constellation required 4 late-stage meridian opening spiritual power crystals. Xiang Beifei decided to unlock only 3 seals to see how it would go, leaving 1 seal intact. If he couldn't control it, he would have Xiaohei immediately close the book. Xiaohei understood immediately and produced the beast pill and the 2 UR items, converting them into 3 late-stage meridian opening spiritual power crystals. The spiritual power crystals quickly integrated into 3 of the stars of the basket constellation, and soon 3 stars lit up, leaving only 1 star dim. A strange aura emanated from the basket constellation. This aura was very peculiar, like a mist, but it showed no sign of volatility. It was nothing like that troublesome ghost from the Do constellation that caused him trouble right off the bat. Xiang Beifei cautiously used his own spiritual power to guide this mist. The mist spread out, intertwining with his spiritual power and slowly forming a vortex. It didn't seem to be anything wrong, but since he hadn't completely unlocked it, Xiang Beifei had no idea what this ability specifically was. He could only carefully explore it with his own spiritual power, relying on his past perception of abilities like learn by analogy. He knew that using such abilities required guiding with spiritual power. The mist didn't show any abnormalities, drifting smoothly along Xiang Beifei's fingertips, looking quite harmonious. Soon, he felt as if his fingers were being pulled by something, his skin pulsating slowly. The strangest thing was that his nails seemed to be slowly growing. Xiang Beifei caught on to this change quickly because he usually kept his nails trimmed, but for some reason they had started growing again. However, the nails hadn't grown long before they were trimmed again, turning into little bits of powder. At this time, Xiang Beifei's expression changed slightly, because he found that the meridians in his fingers seemed to be shrinking. It was known that the meridian opening phase required one to develop meridians. By now, Xiang Beifei had already fully developed the meridians in both hands. However, the mist was interfering with the pinky's meridian, causing it to decompose into strands of spiritual power and drift away. Xiang Beifei gasped. He immediately disconnected his spiritual power from the basket constellation mist, shaking his pinky to dispel the remnant mist from it. The wisp of mist hung in the air and settled on paper. There was a spot on the paper the size of a fingernail that trembled, quickly turned yellow, cracked, and a bit of cotton-like tree sap emerged. The tree sap then solidified, turning into a small pile of sawdust. The mist vanished slowly, and where there had been paper, there was now a hole, surrounded by bits of fibrous tree pulp. Turning paper into tree pulp? This doesn't look like repairing things. Rather, it's more like... Xiang Beifei looked at the paper in amazement. Xiaohe slapped its head and exclaimed, "Woof! Return to the original state." Xiang Beifei was quite astonished. The ability of the basket constellation was actually returned to the original state. In other words, the ability of the basket constellation could remove the current state of an object, reverting it back to its original state continuously. If Xiang Beifei had enough spiritual power, it could even revert paper to a tree, or even to a seed, back to non-existence. Touching his pinky, he finally understood why the meridian there had been decomposed. The meridian had been opened by him, and when he had touched the mist with his pinky, the meridian was forcibly reverted to a pre-opened state. What a sinister ability! Thankfully, he had cut off contact in time. Otherwise, the energy channels in his entire hand might have been decomposed, rendering all his cultivation over the past few days futile. The power of return to the original state clearly surpassed his control. He couldn't manipulate it with his spiritual power. Instead, it was the opposing force that guided him, causing the uncontrollable mist to revert the paper back into wood pulp. However, Xiang Beifei also saw hope, for with this ability, it meant he could guide the sacred stone back to its state before corruption, which in a sense was equivalent to repairing the sacred stone. Should he try it right away? Xiang Beifei was weighing this matter in his mind. He eventually decided to attempt it a little, to see if he could get the sacred stone to work. Spiritual power spread out once more, enveloping that wisp of mist. The mist interwove with his spiritual power, forming a small cyclone. He still dared not fully attempt to guide the mist to act upon the sacred stone, for a slight carelessness could result in return to the original state, overcorrecting and reverting the sacred stone back to its most original form, that is, before his father had inscribed his intentions on it, or to before it was even made into a sacred stone, at which point the sacred stone would be essentially ruined. So he only tried a little bit. That wisp of breath followed his spiritual power and landed on a corroded gap on the sacred stone. Indeed, the corroded gap on the sacred stone began to swell, and a streak of black air gradually peeled off, then dispersed into the air, while the tiny specks that had been corroded away gradually congregated, filling in some of the pit on the surface of the sacred stone. However, it only lasted for less than 2 seconds. The aura from the basket constellation invaded Xiang Beifei's fingers again. His fingertips' energy channels began to be decomposed and dissipated, and at the same time, the aura on the surface of the sacred stone became chaotic. Xiang Beifei's expression was serious as he immediately forced the spirit-gathering book closed. He still couldn't completely block that force. Xiang Beifei had only repaired a tiny bit of the sacred stone, and it was uncertain whether it had had any effect. He picked up the sacred stone and made an imprint on his notebook. The sacred stone revealed strands of ethereal aura which landed on the paper, forming those intermittent inscriptions. Find adventures at Novelbin. Calm. The text was still not fully restored, and comparing it to when Elder Luo had given it to him, there was not much difference. The missing parts were quite serious. Xiang Beifei felt somewhat disappointed. But just as he was about to put the sacred stone away, he suddenly glanced over a line of text and was taken aback, because a new line of text had appeared on the paper. Having forgotten themselves, he wasn't like this before. He even forgot that he was a martial artist he didn't cultivate. Xiang Beifei was extremely astonished. He double-checked, and indeed, this line of text was newly formed. Return to the original state actually worked. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but feel excited. He soon calmed down and began to analyze this sentence. If the sentence were to be fully supplemented based on its meaning, the beginning should be added as what of, and guessing further, it was probably something like doing what of having forgotten themselves. So who does it refer to? Who wasn't like this before? He even forgot he was a martial artist he didn't cultivate. Didn't cultivate? Xiang Beifei frowned. Or is it, he had no cultivation? Who could forget they were a martial artist? Who could have no cultivation? Aside from Xiang Beifei, his son, there seemed to be only one other person whom Xiang Tianxing was so concerned about. Grandfather. This thought flashed through Xiang Beifei's mind. There was one thing that had puzzled him for a long time, ever since he could see other people's system interfaces. In this world, everyone had a system interface, various in kind and many in number. Every person would awaken their own system during their senior year of high school. But only his grandfather's system was a blank expanse of white, giving off the impression that the system was broken. Could this sentence be referring to his grandfather's system issue? Could it be that what he was looking for was the answer to Grandpa's cultivation? Xiang Beifei mused. In this world, other than him, no one else could see someone else's system. He should be the only one able to see other people's systems. Grandfather's system problems were clearer to him than to anyone else. But Xiang Beifei could also be sure of one thing. Grandfather truly was not a martial artist. Had he really forgotten? A multitude of questions filled Xiang Beifei's mind. Xiang Beifei felt invigorated. He opened the spirit-gathering book again and began to draw upon the revert to simplicity power in the original awkward manner, to see if he could recover more information. When it was about to get out of control, he pulled back again. Xiang Beifei eagerly made another imprint of the aura from the sacred stone. However, to his disappointment, the pieces of information revealed this time were too fragmented to piece together into a complete sentence. 10. Shirshi text. Presenting yellow pupils. According to the current 5 services, it's not necessarily so. At Bone Mountain. These terms were indeed new, but the issue was that they were just a few words, complete unto themselves and incoherent. They could not be connected to the context, nor could they be combined together. Xiang Beifei was unable to control the direction of the repairs to the pioneering stone. At this moment, he was more like someone patching a bit on the east wall and then a bit on the west, unable to focus on one area to repair, resulting in even if some terms were restored, they were irrelevant, a waste of effort. When he turned to look, he found that the damage to his fingers was too severe. The newly opened meridian in the little finger of his right hand had been reduced. and to reopen these meridians would take at least 2 days. The loss outweighs the gain. Xiang Beifei suffered heavy losses in order to obtain this information. Since he could not fully control return to the original state, and only restored these terms, his meridians were decomposing, which meant the time to reach the late stage of meridian opening was being pushed back by 2 days. If he continued trying to repair the pioneering stone, whether he could get key information was one thing, but his cultivation was regressing. This was a loss no matter how one calculated it. Late stage of meridian opening. I must reach it as soon as possible. Although Xiang Beifei was puzzled, after weighing the pros and cons, he still gave up the idea of continuing the repairs. He quickly sat down cross-legged, preparing to reopen the meridians he had just lost. The next morning, Xiang Beifei boarded the bus to go home. Looking around, he saw that the system levels of people he encountered on the road were very low, mostly N grade. There were hardly any R grades, and on this trip he hadn't seen a single S grade. That made him somewhat sigh with emotion. After getting used to a place like Liangzhou University, where elites gathered, the awakeners he met were at least R grade, and S grades were a dime a dozen. Whenever he went out, it was either to Qingzhou University or beyond the frontier to the desolate regions, spending his free time studying or cultivating, and when busy, fighting with people. These days, Xiang Beifei had hardly seen any N-grade awakeners. What he saw more often were SSR and SR. So when he saw so many N-grade awakeners on the bus, Xiang Beifei was stunned for a moment, the scene making him feel as if he was in a different world. For an instant, he doubted whether he was out of touch with society. In Juzhou, the most populous grade of awakeners was N-grade. Could be said that N-grade awakeners accounted for nearly over 50%. Then R grade took up 3/10, S grade 1.5/10, and the next SR grade, SSR grade, UR grade combined did not make up 10% of the total population. N grade was the main group in this world. But often, the ones with the least status were N-grade awakeners because their system levels were too low, their system tasks were outrageous, and they hardly had the means to cultivate, staying at the bottom layer. Most N-grade individuals could only follow the literary Tao. For them, living a 9-to-5 life and being able to take care of their little families was good enough. Thus, in the real society of Juzhou, life was dominated by practitioners of the literary Tao. Starting companies, doing business, flipping properties, becoming celebrities, being laborers, engaging in infrastructure. To ensure the stable order of Juzhou, the alliance intentionally let the practitioners of the literary Tao lead the way in life. On one hand, it prevented major chaos, and on the other, it made management easier. Although martial practitioners were very powerful in this society, martial practitioners generally worked in important departments, dealing with desolate beasts or capturing restless criminals, etc. Everyone had their own roles, and martial practitioners couldn't just use their powerful force to disrupt the orderly system of society. The Juzhou Alliance employed the top-tier elite awakeners, their method of governance being highly centralized, with far-reaching powers, allowing them to manage this system world in an orderly fashion. Of course, such a system inevitably brought about very obvious drawbacks. But disregarding the higher-ups and their affairs, the lives of commoners were quite stable. After all, everyone was N-grade, using their system talents to make a living, each relying on their abilities, and perhaps being unintentionally exploited by others through their systems. But isn't that true of any world? Wealth and resources often concentrate in the hands of a few, and for commoners, it's good enough to mix warmth and fullness with a steadfast day. The city guards of Juzhou normally ensured life could proceed as usual to the greatest extent, and commoners rarely encountered desolate beasts. Some people might go their whole lives without seeing what lay beyond the frontier in the desolate regions. Their lives were mostly very simple. Successfully rented out an apartment, sales value +6. Thoroughly cleaned an entire street, cleanliness value +2. Competed in drinking capacity at a dinner to secure a new client, effort value +1. Transported the 97th passenger. Today's task progress 97 to 500. As Xiang Beifei sat on the bus, observing the various logs of the N-grade systems, he felt as if he had returned to normal society. Everyone was hustling for their system tasks, either dreaming of the future or living life step by step, and only when their system tasks were not involved, Could everyone truly open up and chat happily? Xiang Beifei was filled with emotions, and the bus quickly reached its stop. He got off at the platform and checked the time. Since he had caught the early bus, it was only 7 o'clock. Grandfather should still be at home at this time. The restaurant usually opened at 10 in the morning. Since he stopped going to the market, Grandfather didn't head to the store until after 8. Walking towards his own old neighborhood, he pondered whether he should move to a different place. After all, he was now at least a semi-wealthy person. It didn't seem right to always let Grandfather live here. Otherwise, he might end up with another shocking. The genius youngster who can beat up SSRs actually lives in a slum. Type of headline-making Yulei report. As he turned up the stairs, Xiang Beifei saw his grandfather cleaning. Xiang Beifei looked at grandfather's system interface. It was still a screen of snowflakes without any system log. Xiang Qingda was bent over, cleaning the corridor, talking to himself. Who lacks such public spirit to leave the trash like this? After all, this is a public place. It was unclear who had carelessly scattered the garbage all over the corridor. Shreds of paper were flying around. After sweeping the trash in front of his own door, he realized there was still much litter along the corridor, and he decided to sweep it all. The residential environment here was not good, mixed with all sorts of people, many of whom were just trying to make a living and did not pay much attention to cleanliness. The entry in the diary mentioning forgetting his cultivation, could it really be referring to Grandpa? By now, Xiang Beifei had attained the meridian opening stage of cultivation. In this society, reaching the meridian opening stage could be considered being in the front ranks, seen as a master in the eyes of ordinary people. But even someone like Xiang Beifei could not discern more about his grandfather's condition. Xiaofei, how come you are back today? Explore new worlds at Novelbin. Calm. At that moment, Xiang Qingda looked up and saw Xiang Beifei standing at the stairway corner, lost in thought. At first he was startled, soon showing a look of joy and smiling. Grandpa, it's winter break. Xiang Beifei walked over. I thought you would come back in a few more days. Last time you said you wanted to stay longer. I didn't rush you, worried it might interfere with your studies. Xiang Qingda cheerfully patted Xiang Beifei's shoulder and then checked him over carefully, pinching his arm and said, You've gotten a bit thin. Need to eat more. Xiang Beifei wasn't thin. In fact, he had an astonishing appetite at school every day and needed nutrition to keep up with his daily training. Strictly speaking, he had gotten sturdier. But in the eyes of the elderly, no matter how much he ate, he was always thin. I know, Grandpa, you should eat more too, Xiang Beifei said. Ha. Grandpa won't starve. Daming keeps tempting me with delicious meals every day. He's really good at cooking. I can't even think about cutting back. Ha. Xiang Qingda laughed heartily, his face glowing red and looking very healthy, because Xiang Beifei wasn't home, so he didn't need to cook and thus settled his meals at the restaurant. Kong Daming owned the gluttonous feast system. As a former pioneer, later chosen to return to a normal life, he opened a restaurant and led a stable life. His culinary skills were quite extraordinary, really attracting people. His restaurant business was always booming, and considering he was the father of an old comrade in arms, Kong Daming always took good care of Xiang Qingda in terms of meals. Got it all wrong, you've just come back. How can I let you stand around like a fool? Hurry inside and rest. I'll finish sweeping the ground, then we can talk properly about this terms matters, Xiang Qingda said. Allow me to do the sweeping, Xiang Beifei said. No need. I can handle this kind of work. Xiang Qingda waved his hand. It'll be quick. Xiang Beifei thought for a moment, stepped forward gently, and a wave of spiritual power swept from under his feet, quickly covering all the dust on the ground. The doorway's paper debris and dust obediently whirled into the trash can. Xiang Qingda looked at Xiang Beifei in surprise. You have this trick up your sleeve? At school, you have to learn something, right? It'll be useful for making a living later on, Xiang Beifei said with a smile. Nonsense. You were sent to the martial arts college to learn how to fight desolate beasts and protect homes and provinces, not to learn menial tasks like sweeping. Xiang Qingda scolded Xiang Beifei seriously. However, after a while, He murmured, I have to say, it's really clean. We learn how to control spiritual power at the martial arts college. I just picked up a bit and wanted to show it off to Grandpa, Xiang Beifei said. All this from just a single stomp? Xiang Qingde asked, puzzled. Yes, one stomp is enough. Can you shake off some of the dust on the ceiling? Probably. Xiang Qingde's eyes lit up, sizing up his grandson as if discovering a new species. All right, then go inside and stomp a few more times. Shake the dust off the whole house. There's a lot of dust in the nooks that I can't get to. Such a handy cleaning tool for a grandson. Why not use it if it's free? Xiang Qingde probably didn't even realize what his grandson meant among the Zhuzhou elite university freshmen. That was the universally acknowledged top freshman of Zhuzhou this year, grounding other elite schools' SSR freshmen into the dirt. The person who made countless genius students tremble in fear. Yet, such a talented young man who could stomp on SSR awakeners, the first thing he gets tasked with upon coming home is being schemed by his grandfather to clean the house. If those haughty SSR awakeners knew, they'd probably be shocked to their core. Such a misuse of great talent. No problem. Xiang Beifei nodded, quite willing to comply. No matter the talent, once at home you still needed to act like a grandson. Xiang Qingde cheerfully let Xiang Beifei step inside, then said, Have you eaten yet? I didn't know you were coming today, so I didn't make any food. Rest a bit. I'll cook breakfast. No need, I brought food. Xiang Beifei was carrying a big bag of breakfast. I brought some for Grandpa too. Why go to such trouble? Xiang Qingde chided. It was on my way. Xiang Beifei placed the breakfast on the table, knowing that his grandfather usually didn't cook in the morning and just nibbled on a bun to get by, so he brought extra. Grandpa, don't skimp too much. We need to have a proper breakfast. Let's eat together later. Otherwise, I can't eat and we'll end up throwing it away. What nonsense. You haven't even started eating and you're already thinking about throwing it away. Xiang Qingde's expression turned stern, but he still sat down. But at that moment, Xiang Beifei's expression suddenly paused. He turned his head towards the living room ceiling opposite, then frowned. Woof! Xiaohei also barked alertly. What's wrong? Xiang Qingde noticed Xiang Beifei suddenly stop and asked. Xiang Beifei shifted his gaze away from the ceiling and casually said, Nothing, Grandpa. Has anyone visited our house recently? No, just Kong Daming occasionally comes by, oh, and Lu Hong too. No one else really, except Old Li from next door often comes over to chat with me. But I spend most of my time at the shop, Xiang Qingde replied. Xiang Beifei nodded slightly and gestured to Xiaohei. Woof! Xiaohei stared intently at that spot. Right across from the living room door on the ceiling, there was an almost invisible sticker the size of a pinky nail, similar to correction tape used in school, practically unnoticeable. That sticker had a faintly drawn eye on it. It was an invisible camera, an item from the system. Others might not notice these subtle system fluctuations, but they couldn't fool Xiang Beifei. Is it an SR-level system item? Xiang Beifei carefully felt it again and furrowed his brows once more. It was still God-refining stage system fluctuations. Was there a God-refining stage SR awakener surveilling their house? He opened the door to his bedroom, entered, and threw his backpack on the bed, but soon discovered another hidden surveillance camera on his bedroom ceiling. They didn't spare even the bedroom? Planning on watching me sleep? Xiang Beifei snorted lightly, opened his wardrobe, which was neatly organized with clothes. It wasn't him who had done this. Rather, it was his grandfather, probably because he was not home and had nothing else to do, so he had tidied up all his clothes. He casually flipped through the clothes and called out, Grandpa, is my towel in your room? Didn't I put your towel in your wardrobe? I didn't find it. I'll check your wardrobe to see if it was misplaced. Xiang Beifei left his room and entered his grandfather's bedroom. As soon as he entered, he sensed another system fluctuation. His expression grew cold. Someone had silently placed various cameras all around his house. Before Xiang Beifei had awakened his system, his life had always been peaceful, and he hadn't noticed any signs of surveillance. However, since he had awakened his system, things had started to feel off. First, there was Su Yang. After entering college and returning home, he was greeted with all sorts of surveillance, not sparing even the bedroom. And his grandfather seemed completely unaware. How long had he been under surveillance? Xiang Beifei casually flipped through the neat wardrobe, pretending to look for a towel while pondering. The towel's here. I folded it nicely, it's on the lower shelf. Xiang Qingde called out from Xiang Beifei's bedroom. Is it? I couldn't find it just now. Xiang Beifei closed the wardrobe and walked out. Xiang Qingde handed a clean towel to Xiang Beifei. I put it in your wardrobe, knowing you were coming back. I even washed it a couple of days ago, along with the bedsheets and quilt, and sunned them well. Grandpa, you didn't have to go to the trouble. Xiang Beifei took the towel, which still emitted a sun-dried scent, cheering his mood. It's no trouble. You're not home, and I have nothing else to do. So I just tidied up your bedroom a bit. You haven't been home for a while. I had to prepare everything for you, Xiang Qingde said with a hearty laugh. He had raised Xiang Beifei on his own, always taking care of various household chores for him. Now that his grandson was at college, the house suddenly felt empty, and he wasn't used to it, so he kept busy with chores. Xiang Beifei felt somewhat guilty. He should have come home more often, but this semester had indeed been too hectic. Xiang Beifei also aimed to enhance his cultivation swiftly, spending weekends either cultivating or busy with all sorts of chores, and hadn't returned for 4 or 5 months. And upon his return, he found so many cameras installed at home. Xiang Beifei grabbed his grandfather's arm, as spiritual power silently spread through. There were no traces of control on his body, nor any other peculiar system fluctuations remaining. He was a normal person. Fortunately, whoever was monitoring them hadn't laid a hand on him. What's up? Xiang Qingde asked. Just checking if Grandpa lost weight, Xiang Beifei said. Silly boy, how could Grandpa be thin? My wrist is even thicker than yours, Xiang Qingde said, laughing merrily. Xiang Beifei washed his face with the towel and then sat down with his grandfather to eat breakfast. He wasn't in a rush to remove the cameras because he was currently an N-level awakener at the Meridian opening stage, and logically and emotionally, he shouldn't have detected such high-level surveillance of the SR and even God-refining stages. It wasn't wise to startle the snake before the situation was clear. He had to thoroughly investigate this matter. Nevertheless, Xiang Beifei had Xiaohei simply blow a bubble to shield these system-type cameras. In the room, the cameras could only see 2 people eating, but whatever they wanted to say or do, Xiaohei could freely control. Whatever pictures the system cameras wanted to see, Xiaohei was able to create specific images for them. After all, it was the ancestor of system items. Anyone wanting a glimpse into Xiang Beifei's life had to ask Xiaohei first. Xiang Qingde asked Xiang Beifei with concern. How are you doing at school? You are just an N-level awakener, at that elite university where I heard S-levels dominate. You haven't been bullied, have you? Not at all. The elite students are very polite. They take good care of me since my system talent is low, and they always give way to me in everything they do. We get along very happily, Xiang Beifei said calmly. That's good. It's okay if your talent is a bit low. If we just work harder, we can definitely catch up, Xiang Qingde encouraged. Xiang Beifei realized he hadn't told his grandfather about his current level of cultivation. He had been at school this entire semester and had made several trips to the outer wilderness because the things he encountered were quite strange. Talking about them would only worry the old man, so he never said too much when they spoke on the phone. However, he thought it was unnecessary to keep it hidden from the old man all the time, so he asked, Grandpa, what do you think is my current level of cultivation? No matter what level of cultivation, it doesn't matter. Just study hard and do your best. Xiang Qingde looked completely unconcerned, indicating that he didn't care about Xiang Beifei's current level. But he glanced again at Xiang Beifei, clearly itching with curiosity, eager to know about his grandson's current cultivation. In the beginning, when Xiang Beifei scored first in the original points, he thought Xiang Beifei would definitely apply to the Liberal Arts College of Liangzhou University because, typically, N-level awakeners with high scores tend to thrive in the literary Dao at elite universities. Having a diploma from an elite university could do a lot if one masters expertise in a certain area, like making films, sales, even in fields not related to their systems. As long as they could talk well, they wouldn't starve. However, Xiang Beifei chose the path of martial Dao. Xiang Qingde also tried to understand what it meant to choose martial Dao. For martial Dao practitioners, they take a unique path, and their standard of measurement is always one and the same. Cultivation. Your next chapter awaits on Novelbin. Calm. The difficulty for N levels in martial Dao is imaginable. He didn't want to pressure Xiang Beifei, so he had never asked about it actively, but as a grandfather, he still needed to show concern about these things. After a long pause, Xiang Qingde sneaked another peek at Xiang Beifei and asked, "You've been practicing for half a year now. You must have reached the mid-stage of qi controlling, right?" Mid-stage of qi controlling? Xiang Beifei was stunned. "Are your expectations of me so low?" Not yet. No problem. Diligence can make up for the deficiency. Diligence can make up for the deficiency, Xiang Qingde hurriedly said. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but smile ruefully, suddenly remembering those words in his diary. After pondering for a while, he said, "Grandpa, what do you think this level is?" He flicked his hand, and a surge of spiritual power rapidly spun around and then fiercely ignited, forming a fireball in the air which he forcefully condensed. The power of early meridian opening was unabashedly displayed. Xiang Qingde watched the fireball in Xiang Beifei's hands in shock. Xiang Beifei observed his grandfather's expressions closely. Could Grandpa feel something? If he had cultivation before, he should be aware of the power of such a fireball. This is... Xiang Qingde looked at the fireball in astonishment. Could he recognize the spiritual power? Xiang Beifei watched him expectantly. "What level of cultivation is this?" Xiang Qingde exclaimed. "Xiang Beifei, is it the ability to roll fireballs? It looks very impressive." Xiang Qingde was amazed by the dazzling appearance of the fireball. It looked like fireworks. Flashy. Xiang Beifei was momentarily at a loss for words. He didn't know how to explain. In this society dominated by the literary Dao, where the alliance laws are relatively complete, one wouldn't normally see people fighting and killing each other in the streets. For non-martial Dao practitioners who see the power of such a fireball, they can only feel it's stronger than themselves but can't determine which level it belongs to. He carefully watched his grandfather's reaction. His grandfather was not pretending. He was genuinely a bit confused, a naively honest person. "Grandpa, can't you recognize what this spiritual power means?" Xiang Beifei asked. "Stronger than any I've seen." Xiang Qingde asked expectantly, "Is this the power of mid-stage qi controlling?" "Early stage of meridian opening." "Oh, just early stage of meridian opening. No problem. It's not impressive now, just keep pushing." Xiang Qingde nodded slightly. He continued to nibble on the dough stick, with only the slight sound of munching, smack, smack. Moments later, Xiang Qingde suddenly started, now fully grasping the implication, and looked at Xiang Beifei in shock, asking blankly, "Early stage of meridian opening?" "Yes. Is it the early stage of meridian opening that you mean?" I suppose." When asked like this by his grandfather, Xiang Beifei was somewhat unsure himself. Xiang Qingde's eyes widened. His mind couldn't quite make the turn, and after pondering for a full 10 seconds, he said in disbelief, "But I heard that Xiao Wei, even after studying for a year, hasn't even reached the meridian opening phase. She's an S level." "Oh, she's not as serious as I am," Xiang Beifei said. Xiang Qingde. He was dazed for a long while and still didn't quite understand. "I thought that for N levels, cultivation was supposed to be very slow." Xiang Qingde muttered softly. It wasn't just his assumption, many other people thought the same. Scoring first in the college entrance exam, no matter how shocking, could be accepted because as long as one was willing to study and could memorize the knowledge points, scoring high wasn't hard. But cultivation wasn't about memorizing knowledge points. "I inherited Dad's talent," Xiang Beifei thought for a moment, then added, "Maybe I even inherited Grandpa's talents." "Inherited from me?" Xiang Qingde waved his hand dismissively. "Forget about me. When I awaken the Tianqing awakening system, I thought I was a golden phoenix flying out of a chicken coop. After a while, he muttered again. Could it be another phoenix flew out? Is my coop's feng shui that good? Xiang Qingde couldn't help but look up and inspect the living room. Xiang Beifei was somewhat amused and asked, Grandpa, do you have any spiritual power? Xiang Qingde shook his head. Grandpa's system isn't good. I haven't even touched the threshold. Those in the literary Tao could also cultivate, but most of the dreadful N-level system awakeners couldn't step into the Qi-controlling phase their whole lives, couldn't become Tao cultivators, and thus couldn't feel the existence of spiritual power. Xiang Beifei continued to ask, What system is Grandpa? Xiang Qingde looked at his own system interface, hesitated and said, It seems to be a vegetable selling system. Seems to be. Xiang Beifei, eyeing that blank system interface, slightly frowned. Why seems to be? Shouldn't what the system is be obvious at a glance? Xiang Qingde said, It's hard to say, maybe because my system is too ordinary, my aptitude too poor, it often just vanishes and also changes a lot. Xiang Beifei seemed to catch a crucial point and asked further. Changes? What do you mean? Xiang Qingde hesitated, then said, It's like that. I don't know how to explain, it seems like a vegetable selling system, but also seems not. Xiang Beifei furrowed his brow. What does that mean? Tell me, I have a solid grasp of the discipline of systems, maybe I can help analyze it. All right, it's just us family here. No harm in telling you. Xiang Qingde didn't put on airs. When I used to sell vegetables, it occasionally would issue related terms for selling vegetables. But after I started working at Kong Daming Store, it occasionally popped up a task about being a store manager, which was pretty strange. But Grandpa's system, Xiang Beifei started, then quickly stopped. He almost said that no information was displayed. That snowflake system panel, he couldn't see anything at all. Where could there be tasks? Xiang Beifei changed the subject. What did Grandpa just mention about often not seeing what the system is about? Xiang Qingde explained. This is even stranger, my system tasks come and go. Sometimes it's just a flash of a few lines of text. Often I haven't even had the chance to read them clearly. Then they disappear, but seemingly it doesn't matter whether I complete them or not. Doesn't matter in what way? Like last time I saw some words about amaranth, it didn't specify what the reward was. I thought it was asking me to sell amaranth, but it wasn't the season for amaranth. I was wondering where to get some, when suddenly a kitchen knife was thrown into my hand. Task wasn't completed. Yet you still got a reward? Xiang Beifei exclaimed. Yes, I was thrilled that day. I got a kitchen knife for free. Xiang Qingde chuckled happily. Content people are always happy, he was always easygoing. Does this happen often? Xiang Beifei asked. Not really, sometimes my system won't issue a single task for months, with no reaction at all, no matter how much I call it. Last month, right? I remember that day it issued a word about being a store manager. I was still thinking about what store manager role it meant. Then the system without explanation rewarded me with a brick and smacked it on my face. As Xiang Qingde spoke about this, he couldn't help but get irritated, touching his forehead. Xiang Beifei, looking puzzled, quickly asked, You were all right? It was fine, just nearly knocked me out. But no serious harm, my bones are sturdy. Xiang Qingde pointed to his head with his finger, signaling to Xiang Beifei not to worry. Xiang Beifei breathed a sigh of relief and asked, So your system only shows information when there's a task? Right, no regular pattern. It acts up whenever it likes. Huh. Probably my system is the bottommost. I'm used to it. Not expecting it to help me do anything. Xiang Qingde seemed resigned. Xiang Beifei stared at that patch of snowflakes, pondering. He knew many systems were very bizarre, with inexplicable tasks, especially N-level systems. Some tasks might never be achievable for a lifetime, basically blocking one's future. But no matter the system, a reward had to wait until the task was completed. Even for someone as quirky as himself, he needed to participate in other people's system tasks to excavate their systems. But Grandpa's system, what kind of system was that? The most crucial question was, why was his system a patch of snowflakes? Since his arrival in this world, he had never seen anyone else's system as snowflakes. Even the poorest N-level systems were clearly displayed. Only Grandpa's snowflake panel was unique. What level of system was Grandpa's? Xiang Beifei inquired. Xiang Qingde shook his head. I've forgotten. Forgotten? I have no recollection. It was many years ago, before your father went to university. I might have been hit by a car, suffered injuries, and I've been forgetful ever since. But given how useless this system is, it's probably only N-level, which is normal. Xiang Qingde looked at Xiang Beifei contentedly, then added, But you're different. Even if they're both N-level, you clearly have much more talent than me. Speaking of which, Xiang Qingde asked with great excitement, Did you receive guidance from our Liangzhou's governor Shang Tianqiu? I remember he also graduated from Liangzhou University, and he's N-level, but very powerful. This was the only explanation he could think of at the moment. Maybe. Xiang Beifei wasn't sure which professor had mentored Shang Tianqiu. It was said that the professor had already retired, but that wasn't what he wanted to know right now. No matter how powerful Shang Tianqiu was, it wasn't as important as his grandfather's matters. He then asked, And the brick and kitchen knife? Where are they? I put the kitchen knife in the kitchen. I use it every day to chop vegetables and cook, said Xiang Qingde. Upon hearing this, Xiang Beifei immediately got up and ran to the kitchen. His gaze quickly fell on the chopping board, and he spotted the kitchen knife. Woof! Xiaohei jumped onto the chopping board in surprise and stretched out a little paw to scrape the kitchen knife. Strange. Xiang Beifei also noticed. This kitchen knife was not a system item at all. He picked up the kitchen knife and examined it closely. It was very ordinary. The handle was made of wood, and the blade was forged from iron, shiny black, and the edge looked very sharp. There was no system fluctuation. If it weren't for his grandfather's mention, he wouldn't have even paid attention to this kitchen knife. He would have just considered it a roadside stall item that could be bought for 10 yuan. Discover hidden tales at Novelbin.com. This was very strange. Normally, items from the system could not be concealed from Xiang Beifei, who specialized in treating all kinds of flashy system abilities. Any system item would be detected by him at a glance. Yet this kitchen knife was definitely not a system item. Half a year ago, when Xiang Beifei was at home, he had also seen this kitchen knife and hadn't given it much thought. He would occasionally help his grandfather with chores, cut vegetables, and back then he didn't think too much about it. But this kitchen knife turned out to be from his grandfather's system? Grandpa, are you sure it's this kitchen knife? Xiang Beifei walked out of the kitchen, holding the knife, and asked with confusion. Yes, that's it, nodded Xiang Qingde. It doesn't seem like a system item, Xiang Beifei hesitated to say. Is that so? But it came from my system, Xiang Qingde stated. Now Xiang Beifei was uncertain. He pondered for a moment and then with force, he channeled spiritual power into the kitchen knife. The kitchen knife showed no reaction. Xiang Beifei was slightly astonished. If it were a system item, upon contact with spiritual power, it would be activated by the spiritual power. He simply increased his spiritual power again, trying to test how much of a spiritual power impact the kitchen knife could withstand. Xiang Beifei continuously increased the spiritual power in his hands because he was worried about breaking it and being unable to explain to his grandfather. So he started with Qi controlling stage spiritual power input. But the kitchen knife withstood the early stages of Qi controlling spiritual power impact. He continued to carefully increase the level of spiritual power. Mid-Qi controlling stage, late Qi controlling stage, early meridian opening stage. The kitchen knife remained unharmed. Xiang Beifei was stunned. His current cultivation was only at the early stages of meridian opening, and such power should be enough to shatter any Qi controlling stage system item. Normally, even stone and iron walls could be destroyed by his spiritual power. Yet the kitchen knife showed no signs of falling apart. Considering the handle was made of wood, it should have shattered with a single strike. Wait, is this really wood? Xiang Beifei suddenly wasn't so sure anymore. He felt the handle of the kitchen knife was made of wood, but it seemed not to be. Splash! The flames immediately burst into life on the wooden handle of the kitchen knife. But it wasn't damaged. Xiang Beifei took in a sharp breath. This kitchen knife was definitely not an ordinary item. Grandpa, Did your system really kick out this kitchen knife as a system item? Xiang Beifei inquired. Yeah. Xiang Qingde nodded. Are you sure it's a quest reward? Xiang Beifei asked seriously. Well. Xiang Qingde recalled for a moment and said, it was given to me by the system, so it should count as a system reward, right? So it might not be a system reward after all, because from the previous description, it seemed that the system had only shown a line of text. Without even considering whether to undertake it, the kitchen knife and the brick had both been summoned. Right, where's the brick? Asked Xiang Beifei hastily. He must investigate this matter thoroughly. Now that he had the kitchen knife, he had to find the brick and see if there was anything peculiar about it. It gave me a lump on my head and made stars dance in front of my eyes. It ticked me off. I thought it was just a lousy brick without much use, so I threw it away. Xiang Qingde complained, dissatisfied. Xiang Beifei was somewhat astonished. You threw it away just like that, even though it was an item from the system? The kitchen knife can chop vegetables, and bricks are everywhere. They are not much use, so why keep it? Xiang Qingde didn't care that much. In his eyes, what mattered most was whether something could be useful. For instance, money to give to his grandson, or a knife to chop vegetables. But a brick, as inconspicuous as it gets, had no place at home. His justification did make sense. Some N-level awakeners, upon completing a quest, received rewards that were bizarre and useless knickknacks. A torn tissue, a plastic bag, incredibly frustrating. Many N-level awakeners who got such system rewards could only throw them away. But Xiang Beifei felt a major headache coming on. The kitchen knife clearly wasn't ordinary, so that brick might very well be the same. Grandpa, think quick. Into which trash can did you throw the brick? Xiang Beifei asked. Why do you care so much about the brick? Xiang Qingde asked, puzzled. I need to analyze it. Your system is unprecedented, and it might even serve as a topic for my university thesis. If I could publish a paper on it, I'd be a pioneer in the field of system studies. Xiang Beifei earnestly bluffed. Is that right? Hearing this, Xiang Qingde had never imagined his frustrating system could be of such use. Since his grandson had put it that way, he naturally took it seriously. Let me think, I was in the shop that day, so the brick must also be in the shop. I just tossed it into a corner of the kitchen. Not sure if it's still there, Xiang Qingde said. Let's go take a look, Xiang Beifei suggested. Xiang Qingde felt his grandson was acting a bit anxious, but he didn't think too much of it. Whatever Xiang Beifei wanted to do, he, as a grandfather, of course had to support him unconditionally. The two finished breakfast and set out together for Kong Daming's shop. Early in the morning, Kong Daming's shop wasn't open yet, but Xiang Qingde had a key. He entered the shop through the back door and headed straight for the kitchen. I remember that day I was sitting by the counter, looking at the bills, when I was hit by the brick. Then I just tossed the brick aside on the ground. Xiang Qingde went to the counter, searched underneath, but found no trace of the brick. Gone. Maybe it was thrown out? Should we ask Kong Daming later if he has seen it? Xiang Qingde searched around the shop but still couldn't find the brick. Xiang Beifei helped to look as well. Since the brick wasn't a system item, he couldn't find it directly through his keen system perception. So he had to search the entire shop with his spiritual power. There were indeed many system items in the shop, and he quickly spotted a business license emitting system fluctuations. This business license was Kong Daming and his wife's measure to keep the shop safe, capable of suppressing those who wanted to dine and dash. In a world overrun with systems, you never know who might awaken what kind of system. Like the tyrant meal system, which makes restaurant owners feel dining and dashing is acceptable, or the confusion system, which, even without paying, can bewilder the cashier into thinking the bill was settled. Thus, for small business owners, without any protection measures, the business might collapse in 3 days. Normally, before starting a business, one needs to register with the Alliance and apply for a business license. This was not just any business license, but one made with the participation of high-level awakeners. The Alliance rated business licenses at various levels: S, SR, SSR, and UR. Each level came with a different service fee, and business owners could choose according to the scale of their store. Generally, the higher the level of the business license, the higher the monthly service fee. The UR level isn't something ordinary shops can afford, mostly belonging to high-end hotels of 5-star caliber. Kong Daming's shop had an SR level license, which was adequately sufficient. Just by having this license, due to system suppression, the scope of this shop would essentially eliminate the problem of not paying after a meal. After all, most of the world was made up of N, R, and S-level awakeners. A business license ensured fairness in trading. Apart from the business license radiating system waves, there were other measures put in place by Kong Daming and his wife, although obviously not as high-end as the license. Xiang Beifei noticed that the business license could record the transactions of customers, akin to a camera, and he immediately took down the license. "Be careful with that. Don't break it," Xiang Qingde hurriedly cautioned. "Grandpa, don't worry. An SR-level business license isn't that fragile." Xiang Beifei fiddled with the license, which was always active. To check the records, the owner's permission was needed, but that was clearly unnecessary for Xiang Beifei because Xiaohei reached out a paw and directly dealt with it. Operating the business license was like using a tablet. It swiftly displayed the entire shop's imagery, extremely clearly. Even if it were stored in a box, it could record every aspect of the shop's interior with utmost clarity. It didn't have blind spots like a camera but recorded comprehensively. "Grandfather, when did you get hit by that brick last time?" Xiang Beifei inquired. "About a month ago? In December, I think. Let me see. The 13th or 14th perhaps." Xiang Qingde wasn't quite sure. Xiang Beifei adjusted the time backward. He sped through an entire day, then stopped around 4 or 5 in the afternoon on the 14th, and the image quickly appeared. In the footage, Xiang Qingde was sitting at the counter, checking the order list on his computer, the system interface above his head still showing nothing but static. But just then, Xiang Qingde seemed to notice something. A few fragmented words suddenly appeared on his usually static-filled system interface. He furrowed his brow, about to check his system, when those few words quickly vanished. As Xiang Qingde was looking around his system interface, suddenly it seemed as if a vortex had formed within it, and then a black brick came flying out, hitting Xiang Qingde right on the forehead as he was looking at his system interface. Xiang Qingde immediately cried out in pain, bending over and holding his forehead, while the brick fell to the ground. A female shop assistant nearby noticed and quickly came over to check. It took him a while to recover, and then he picked up the brick from the ground, examining it with confusion. He tapped on it with his finger, finding it to be just an ordinary brick. Just then a customer came over to settle the check, so Xiang Qingde tossed the brick aside and went to attend to the customer. After that, a stream of guests arrived one after another, and Xiang Qingde immediately went to arrange seating, completely forgetting about the brick. Xiang Beifei's gaze was drawn to the black brick on the ground by the camera. The brick was flat and seemed no different from an ordinary brick. Its material appeared very dense, but it was unclear what it was made of. Since he couldn't touch it himself, Xiang Beifei could not be certain whether it was indeed a system item. But the brick definitely came out of his grandfather's system interface. Of that there was no mistake. He zoomed the camera in, focusing on the few words that had just appeared on his grandfather's system interface, and quickly pressed the pause button. The rest of the system interface was still just a blurry mess of static, but a few words had appeared, as if struggling to emerge from a mound of snowflakes. Reading, "Bone Mountain, Shop, Manager." These words flashed and then disappeared, leaving no trace. What followed was the footage of the black brick striking. Xiang Beifei looked at the words "Bone Mountain" and was momentarily startled. Bone Mountain? Isn't that a term mentioned in the Pioneer Stone? "Do you remember the words that appeared on the system, grandfather?" Xiang Beifei asked. "I forgot. Look, I got hit by that brick. How could I pay attention to that?" Xiang Qingde pointed at the screen and said, "Didn't you ever think about picking up that brick afterward, grandfather?" Xiang Beifei asked. That day, there were a lot of customers, and there was an unfully killed desolate beast in the kitchen that suddenly jumped up. I don't know why it went crazy, but the kitchen became a total mess. Although Kong Daming quickly dealt with it, I was so busy that I forgot about it. Xiang Qingde shook his head. The desolate beast jumped up? It's possible that its ability to move wasn't completely destroyed. This is normal. Sometimes, desolate beasts still manage to jump up, but most of them are taken care of. Xiang Qingde was very familiar with the restaurant's procurement process. He checked the inventory every day and inspected each ingredient to ensure the accuracy of the orders. Resources in Jiuzhou are limited, and self-sufficiency is difficult to meet demands. So some companies specialize in hunting desolate beasts for food. These hunters don't belong to the pioneers of Jiuzhou. They are employed by private companies to hunt desolate beasts purely for profit. Some edible desolate beasts produce toxins upon death or decay within a few hours. Hence, capturing these beasts requires severing their motor nerves before taking them alive. Hunters generally only hunt weaker desolate beasts, none exceeding the meridian opening phase, and they operate within the cultivated domain. Every time they bring back desolate beasts, they must undergo strict checks and have a series of passes. Although neglect can occur, these beasts are unlikely to stir up much trouble. The Jiuzhou Alliance is extremely strict about desolate beasts entering its territory, especially those beyond the meridian opening phase. For live capture, various inspections are mandatory. Xiang Beifei, having visited the desolate wilderness beyond the domain many times, was also very familiar with these matters. Xiang Beifei turned the surveillance to the kitchen, where a double-tailed tiger-headed fish had caused an uproar. It was kept in an iron cage and, when brought back, its tails had been chopped off, leaving it barely alive. However, at a certain moment, the eyes of the double-tailed tiger-headed fish in the cage suddenly flashed red, and it abruptly jumped up, biting through the fish cage and lunging at one of the waiters, biting into the waiter's shoulder. The waiter screamed and then fell to the ground, knocking down others nearby and scattering pots and pans everywhere. Kong Daming rushed to the noise and with a slap, he severed the head of the tiger-headed fish. However, even with its head severed, the fish still clung to the waiter's shoulder. Unable to remove it, Kong Daming resorted to using his samadhi fire to burn the fish's head to ashes, and then swiftly used his spiritual power to tend to the wounded waiter. The waiter's injuries healed quickly, and apart from the shock, there was no serious harm. Strange. Xiang Beifei replayed the video. According to his understanding of the double-tailed tiger-headed fish, it should not display red lights in its eyes unless it was being controlled. He meticulously examined the system interfaces of all the waiters in the kitchen. These waiter systems were mostly simple. The waiter in charge of collecting dishes was an awakener of the N-level pots and pans system. The one responsible for handling the ingredients had awakened the N-level life-taking system, and his strength was only at the initial chi-controlling phase, capable of accumulating system points only by slaying creatures in such places. Of course, some had awakened the N-level striving system, but no matter which system awakener they were, none of them made a move on the tiger-headed fish, which means they couldn't control it. Not to mention, S-level awakener Kong Daming was even less likely to be involved. But for some reason, the tiger-headed fish's eyes emitted a strange red glow. Unable to find the reason for the red glow in the tiger-headed fish's eyes from the surveillance, Xiang Beifei turned the camera back and refocused on the floor tile, intending to see who had picked it up. About 10 minutes later, a male store clerk appeared at the counter. He was originally going to settle the bill for a customer but accidentally kicked the tile. Confused, he picked it up and asked another female store clerk about it, the same girl who had noticed the floor tile earlier and informed him. The male clerk showed a hint of surprise. He then threw the brick into the trash can. However, Xiang Beifei suddenly became startled. "Grandpa, when did this clerk come here?" Xiang Beifei asked, pointing to the person who had picked up the brick. "Oh, you mean Xiao Zhang." So it was Xiao Zhang who threw the brick into the trash. "It seems that we might not be able to find the brick now," Xiang Qingde said, looking at the screen with some regret. "Who is Xiao Zhang? When did he start working at the store?" Xiang Beifei pressed. "Xiao Zhang has been here for quite a while, about 2 months now. Xiao Zhang is a good lad, diligent and quick, very clever." Xiang Qingde quite liked this Xiao Zhang. Clever? How could he not be clever? Xiang Beifei furrowed his brows, intently watching Xiao Zhang's system interface. Host, Shaosheng, SR grade, Integration System, Realm, God Refining Early Stage. An SR grade expert in the early stages of God refining actually working as a clerk at Kong's Mansion Feast was certainly strange. Kong Daming was only an S-grade awakener with the cultivation of the early meridian opening stage. He probably couldn't imagine that he had somehow hired an SR-grade awakener as a clerk in his own restaurant. SR-grade awakeners generally had bright futures, and the Alliance would go to great lengths to recruit such talents. The possibility of them being reduced to working in a restaurant was zero. Stay tuned to Novelbin. Calm. Those who usually worked in restaurants were mostly N-grade awakeners. The inclusion of an SR grade among these N-grade awakeners appeared to Xiang Beifei like a crane among chickens, highly conspicuous. What is this SR grade doing here? Xiang Beifei became vigilant. Although Kong Daming was a pioneer, he was only at the meridian opening stage. It was impossible for him to command someone at the God refining stage. And this SR grade awakener named Shaosheng, with the cultivation of the God refining stage, chose to be a waiter at a restaurant of all things? Was he here to experience life? Or did he have an ulterior motive? What could he possibly be after? Xiang Beifei realized there was something fishy about this matter, and he thought of the surveillance cameras that had suddenly appeared at his home, frowning deeply. So those SR-grade surveillance cameras at home, were they set up by this guy? Since Grandpa worked here, he had to thoroughly investigate this matter. If the other party had any intentions against his grandfather, Xiang Beifei would have to teach him a harsh lesson. But in the video, he was unable to access more of Shaosheng's system logs, so he planned to wait for Shaosheng to come to the store before investigating thoroughly. He continued to watch the video. The brick was thrown into the trash can, and about 10 minutes later, Shaosheng took the trash can outside. He was supposed to go dump the trash, but after walking out of the store and seeing no one around, he suddenly picked up the brick again, kept it, and then dumped the rest of the trash. This guy took the brick. Xiang Beifei frowned deeply. Did he also notice something unusual about the brick? How should he go about getting it back from him? What's Shaosheng doing with the brick? What's the use of a broken brick? Xiang Qingde asked in confusion. I don't know. I'll ask him later, Xiang Qingde said. All right. Xiang Beifei didn't plan to tell Grandpa the truth, as he couldn't reveal his ability to see others' system interfaces. However, letting Grandpa, who was unaware of the truth, ask Shaosheng for the brick wouldn't arouse suspicion. Now that they had arrived at the store, Xiang Qingde started to get busy with the grand opening. Although Kong Daming treated him like royalty, he insisted on doing what he should. Xiang Beifei also helped Grandpa start getting the restaurant ready, and about half an hour later, other clerks also started arriving one after another. When everyone saw Xiang Beifei, they greeted him very enthusiastically. Isn't that Xiaofei? Xiaofei, you're like a huge star to us. Yes, so impressive. Truly a child to be proud of. I'd thank my lucky stars if my kid was half as impressive as you. The clerks all looked at Xiang Beifei with great admiration. Their eyes, as they gazed at him, were as if they were looking at a superstar, filled with awe and envy. Xiang Beifei didn't understand. He didn't seem to recognize these people and had never had any dealings with them before, yet their attitude was surprisingly familiar. Xiang Qingde laughed heartily. Of course, my Xiaofei is a very diligent child. He's doing superbly at the Martial Arts College of Liangzhou University. Uncle Xiang is blessed. Having such a wonderful grandson really brings honor to us N-level awakeners. A middle-aged man with a full beard said earnestly, giving a big thumbs up. Xiang Beifei figured it out. Apparently, his grandfather had been bragging about him to these people over the past few months. But his reputation was already quite large, after all. An N-level defeating those S-level awakeners with various scholarly accolades and successfully getting into an elite university was indeed worth boasting about a lot. Now many parents who had children in school viewed Xiang Beifei as a role model for N-level students to make a comeback, using his story to earnestly educate their own children. And most of the waitstaff here were N-level awakeners. Their system talents were not high, and they could only do the most menial jobs, always being very cautious around higher-level awakeners. It was no wonder they envied the rise of a phoenix from within the N-level ranks. By the way, Old Master Xiang, Xiaofei has been studying at the elite university for half a year now. How is his cultivation? At that moment, another clerk came over and asked. Xiang Beifei turned his head and raised his eyebrows slightly. It was exactly Xiao Sheng. This guy, coming right out with such a question? However, Xiang Beifei didn't react much. Instead, Xiang Qingde smiled and said, "My Xiaofei's cultivation? It's a bit better than his peers." "How much better is a bit? Old Master, please, tell us. Xiaofei is so excellent. It's certain he's better than his peers, but how high exactly is his cultivation?" The others also eagerly asked Xiang Qingde. "Yes, what exactly is the level of his cultivation?" Xiao Sheng asked curiously. He asked this question very naturally, like others, as if he was chatting about everyday gossip, not making it seem odd at all. "My Xiaofei's cultivation." Xiang Qingde paused deliberately. Everyone listened intently, but Xiang Qingde laughed and said, "Why don't you compare him with people his age and find out?" He knew his grandson was at the meridian opening level, which was definitely a bit better than his peers. But how could he casually discuss his grandson's strength? What if some scheming person took note of it? The matters about the academic achievements were well known, and speaking casually about them was okay. However, broadcasting his strength was still something to be kept under wraps. Xiang Beifei smiled too. His grandfather might often be a bit muddled, but most of the time he spoke very properly, like the time Yu Lei came for an interview. Of course, actually, speaking about the cultivation level wouldn't matter much. If Xiao Sheng really had the intention to inquire, a simple trip to the elite university would do. Xiang Beifei had been very conspicuous in the freshman competitions, and his meridian opening level cultivation was definitely not something that could be hidden. The league needed to protect the privacy of elite students, so the videos from the freshman competitions were not open to the public. Most of the elite students had watched the matches, and the matter of cultivation level wasn't really a secret and could be discussed. Xiang Qingde obviously didn't know about this, but he had no intention to show off either. Everyone pressed for answers again, but Xiang Qingde just jested around and wouldn't say, and Xiang Beifei just smiled and remained silent, suggesting it was not much different. Everyone was somewhat disappointed but did not ask too insistently, as this kind of matter was somewhat private too. "All right, you all better start getting ready to open. It's almost 10 o'clock, perk up." Xiang Qingde, being a manager in the restaurant, quickly sent everyone off to their tasks, restocking where needed and preparing the vegetables, ready to open for business. Xiao Sheng's task was to mop the floor, which he did while praising, "Old Master Xiang, I really envy you. If I had been as diligent as Xiaofei in my youth, maybe I wouldn't be here mopping floors now." "Xiao Zhang, don't be discouraged. As long as you are diligent and strive to improve yourself, there will always be a chance to come out on top. It's never too late to start trying," Xiang Qingde encouraged. Xiao Sheng shook his head with a wry smile and said, "It's tough. In this society, system talent determines everything, and people born N-level are destined to be oppressed by those with higher-level talents. To reach their level, we need to put in many times more effort. Maybe even after 10 years of hard work, the results may not match what they can achieve with a sneeze." Xiang Beifei was wiping the table nearby and slightly frowned. That was unfortunately true. Some SSRs are strengthening while eating and drinking, and it's impossible to compare between people. But this kind of talk shouldn't come from someone like Xiao Sheng. He glanced again at Xiao Sheng's system, confirming it was indeed SR level. This guy, has he disguised himself to the extent that he even believes he is an N level now? Has he perfectly integrated even his mentality? Xiang Qingde said seriously, "A person, no matter what, must never stop trying. Look at Xiaofei, his talent is also N level, but he has always been trying hard. During the college entrance exam period, he studied very late every day to achieve good results. Xiao Zhang, you are still young, you must not give up." Xiang Beifei slightly shrugged. The truth was, before the college entrance exam, he was locked up in his own bedroom practicing spiritual power, not studying. because he already knew all that knowledge earlier. However, his grandfather apparently did not know this, always believing that he was writing vigorously, so Xiang Beifei did not explain too much. Always remember one thing. As long as life can't knock us down, it is us who are in control of our lives, Xiang Qingde earnestly said to Xiao Zhang. Yes, Uncle Xiang is right. I will strive hard as you say. Xiao Shang immediately nodded, looking very honest, sincere, and showing great respect for Xiang Qingde. But this made Xiang Beifei even more suspicious. An SR-level awakener, he is disguised so well, what exactly does he want to do? We haven't introduced ourselves yet. My name is Zhang Cheng. Xiao Shang extended his hand towards Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei. Enjoy new chapters from Novelbin. Calm. Xiang Beifei calmly reached out and shook his hand. I know your name. There's nobody here who doesn't know it, Xiao Shang said cheerfully. Xiang Beifei was surprised again inside. He was not surprised that Xiao Shang knew his name, but he was surprised that Xiao Shang did not use spiritual power to test him. Normally, if one wanted to test someone, they would definitely take the opportunity during a handshake to secretly use spiritual power to probe. With Xiao Shang's early god refining strength, if he wanted to probe an N-level student's cultivation level, he should definitely be able to do it without the student realizing it. Of course, Xiang Beifei was not an ordinary N-level, as he could clearly see the other person's intentions. However, Xiao Shang shouldn't know this. He just now seemed so eager to know his own cultivation level, and now he suddenly refrains from testing? Unless he thinks testing is not a good idea? Or perhaps, he already knows his own cultivation level and sees no need for testing. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but take another look at this man. Xiao Shang was probably around 27, possibly about 8 or 9 years older than Xiang Beifei, with a very ordinary appearance. From his looks, no one would associate him with an SR-level awakener. But this guy just appearing in the store, honestly mopping the floor, earning a meager income, was definitely a hidden sweeper monk. This was very different from those SR students he usually encountered at school. Xiang Qingde recalled the matter regarding the brick, and said, By the way, Xiao Zhang, there was a brick near the counter the other day. Did you see it? A brick. Xiao Shang's eyes flickered slightly. Yes, around the 14th in the afternoon, I dropped a brick on the floor, and then there was an issue in the kitchen, wasn't there? I went to see, and when I came back it was gone. Did you see it? Xiang Qingde asked. Xiao Shang nodded and said, Oh, you mean that black brick? I thought someone had carelessly thrown it. Since it was very obstructive, I threw it into the trash can. Did you really throw it into the garbage can? Xiang Qingde frowned slightly. Xiao Shang pondered for a moment and then said, Not exactly. I picked it up again later and took it home. I have a hobby of collecting stones, and I thought that brick looked quite special, so I thought of keeping it. I see. So it was with you. I was wondering why I couldn't find it. Xiang Qingde nodded slightly. Old Master Xiang, is that brick very important? Xiao Shang asked. Yes, I won't hide it from you. That was a reward from my system. I didn't manage to pick it up in time, and now the system has issued another mission that relates to that brick. So I was just thinking of finding it. Xiang Qingde quickly came up with a very fitting excuse. As long as he mentioned doing a system task, no one would suspect anything. That brick is for Old Master Xiang's mission? Then I'll hurry back and get it for Old Master. I have 15 minutes before work. Just wait. I'll have it back in 10 minutes. Xiao Shang put down the broom and quickly left the restaurant, treating Xiang Qingde's request as a major priority without any hesitation. Xiang Qingde watched Xiao Shang's retreating figure and smiled at Xiang Beifei. Xiao Zhang, this kid. I told you he is very honest. He doesn't have any bad intentions. Xiang Beifei shifted his gaze from the restaurant's entrance and finally said, Grandfather, has Xiao Zhang shown a lot of interest in our family? Like often asking this and that? Or asking about matters regarding my parents? It's not too bad, we just chat with each other. Don't worry, Grandpa knows what can be said to outsiders and what can't. But he's an orphan with no fixed abode, traveling around doing odd jobs until he came here not long ago. He's a very diligent person, always doing whatever I ask of him in the shop. Xiang Qingde said. Does he really listen to you that much? I'm the manager here. I'm his boss, so of course he has to listen to me. Xiang Qingde looked quite pleased with himself. He probably had no idea that the Shaozhong he was ordering around every day was an SR-level awakener in the God-refining stage. Is that so? Xiang Beifei didn't say anything explicit. Shaosheng was definitely not here just to work. Discover more content at novelbin.com. Then, was he here to surveil his grandfather? So was it him who had installed so many cameras in his house? But the thing is, Xiang Beifei had just checked Shaosheng's system log and found that the latter had no records of exchanging anything for surveillance cameras, and his system didn't even have the capability to monitor. That is to say, the provider of the cameras must be someone else. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but think of Su Yang, whom he had met shortly after he first gained access to his awakening system. To this day, he still hadn't completely investigated Su Yang's intentions. This semester, Su Yang had been attending his classes and hadn't done anything to Xiang Beifei, but Xiang Beifei had always been wary of him, constantly keeping an eye on Su Yang's system. After Xiang Beifei gained access to the awakening system, Su Yang tested him by releasing a desolate beast hound. Now there was another SR-level awakener around his grandfather. Xiang Beifei found it hard not to link these two people together. So were these two guys in cahoots? Was it because of his old man? Or was there some other reason? Xiang Beifei's mind was full of questions. Shaosheng quickly brought over that piece of black brick, apologizing with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, Uncle Xiang. I didn't know this was your system reward. Luckily, I didn't tamper with it, and now it has been returned intact. I hope I haven't caused you any trouble. Xiang Qingde took the brick, weighed it in his hand, and said, Indeed, it's mine. No problem. It's good that you've brought it back. Then I'll get back to my work. Shaosheng didn't linger, picked up the mop, and continued with his own work. Xiang Beifei didn't immediately reach for that brick, and the old man didn't give it to him right away either. They waited for Shaosheng to be out of sight before Xiang Qingde handed it to him. Take it to study, see if you can write a sensational research paper. Grandpa doesn't understand this stuff, but it's your duty as an elite student to make a contribution to the future of humankind in Jiuzhou, isn't it? Xiang Qingde did have a sense of social responsibility for the system, and he wanted Xiang Beifei to succeed and become a pillar of the alliance as soon as possible. In his view, students from elite universities are born for the development of the alliance. All right. Xiang Beifei didn't offer any explanations. For him, it was enough to protect himself and his grandfather. He probed the brick with a bit of spiritual power, and there were no traces of spiritual power left by Shaosheng on it, meaning he hadn't tampered with the brick. However, the less evidence he found, the more suspicious Xiang Beifei became of the guy. But at the moment, the existence of the black brick was of greater concern to him. Clearly now was not the time to study the brick, so he decided to wait until he got home. At that time, Kong Daming also arrived at the store and instantly spotted Xiang Beifei, immediately greeting him with enthusiasm. Xiaofei is back? It's been almost half a year since we've seen each other. Huh. Hello, Uncle Kong. Xiang Beifei greeted him politely. That's my boy. Xiaofei is so promising. Kong Daming came over and heartily clapped Xiang Beifei on the shoulder, then lowered his voice. Xiaowen told me all about it. Truly worthy of being Xiang Tianqing's son. Haha, come on. I'm treating you today to welcome you back. Just returning from winter break. There's no dust to wash off, Xiang Qingde said. That's different. When Xiaofei succeeds, it makes us all happy. Old man, don't busy yourself today. I'm giving you the day off. Go on and spend more time with Xiaofei, Kong Daming said with a laugh. Why make a fuss over nothing? I haven't finished my work. Xiang Qingde was always very principled in his work here, even though Kong Daming had invited him to the store to act as the big shot. He didn't like special treatment, preferring to rely on his own labor. He earned his wage by working, and if there was no work to be done, he would find work to do, keeping the store in perfect order. Kong Daming was very clear about Xiang Qingde's temperament and immediately said, Then as the boss, I'll assign you a task. Xiaofei is our shop's honored guest today, so you better attend to him right away. Don't neglect him. Go on, go on. There's no need to fuss over him. Xiang Qingde waved his hand dismissively. Kong Daming put on a stern face and said, I am the boss. You are the employee. When the boss assigns a task to an employee, you pick and choose. Is that proper? This? Xiang Qingde hesitated. All right, go on. Take a break upstairs. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll rely on Xiaofei, our distinguished guest, to shoot up the ranks. Don't you ruin this for me. If you fail to host properly and leave a bad impression on Xiaofei, you'll bear a big responsibility, Kong Daming said. Kong Daming chuckled heartily and, without a second word, pushed the grandfather and grandson duo upstairs. Xiang Qingde was quite helpless, but having been so cajoled by Kong Daming, he had nothing to say. Upstairs there were private rooms and a lounge. Kong Daming directed them to the lounge, brewed a pot of tea for them, and then went downstairs to prepare the midday banquet. It was only then that Xiang Beifei took out the black brick, placed it on the table, and began to examine it carefully again. The brick was just like the kitchen knife. Even using spiritual power couldn't destroy it. Grandpa's system items are really powerful. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but say. Powerful. Xiang Qingde, sitting opposite, looked at Xiang Beifei with puzzlement and said, The strength of that brick when it hit me was not small. Grandpa really has no recollection of this brick? I can't destroy the kitchen knife or the brick. Xiang Beifei knocked the kitchen knife on the black brick. Look, the knife strikes the brick, and neither is affected. Xiang Qingde, not quite understanding, took the knife and made a few gestures on the brick, saying, What does this show? Grandpa should be aware that my strength is stronger than yours now, right? That's right. The stronger you are, the happier Grandpa is. But I can't destroy the kitchen knife and the brick, and that really says something. Eh? Xiang Qingde looked quite surprised. Though life was dominated by practitioners of the literary Tao, those martial artists who could resist desolate beasts were still more revered. The higher one's cultivation, the higher their social status. This was unchanging, as martial artists had an easier time making money. Even practitioners of the literary Tao understood the matters of the system. Those of higher realm could defeat the system items of those with lower realms. This was a fact. He furrowed his brow slightly and said with astonishment, You can't destroy my system items? Yes. Xiang Beifei nodded. But why? Grandpa, how much do you remember about your past? For instance, what was the situation like when you received the awakening system? Xiang Beifei asked. Xiang Qingde tried to recall and then, touching his forehead, shook his head. Not much. I haven't figured it out until now. Has Grandpa ever thought that you were once a martial artist? I was a martial artist? Xiang Qingde looked surprised, then broke into laughter. With these old arms and legs? Grandpa, do you know about the northern district of the essential domain? Xiang Beifei inquired. Xiang Qingde paused. His complexion drastically changed, and he stuttered, Why are you suddenly asking about that? So Grandpa does know about it? Who told you that? Xiang Qingde asked nervously. I study at my dad's school. I know what pioneers are, Xiang Beifei said. Xiang Qingde spoke in a slightly agitated and uneasy manner. Don't think too much into it. What does Grandpa think I'm considering? Xiang Beifei questioned. I can't be sure. Xiang Qingde wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead and added, But you can't be too impulsive. Grandpa is afraid I'll run off to the outside wilderness? Then could you tell me about my dad? Xiang Beifei asked again. Xiang Qingde hesitated as if debating whether or not to speak. After a long while, he finally said, That day, people from the Alliance came and told me that your dad went missing in the northern district of the essential domain. I'm not very clear on the details, but back then you were so young I didn't think to tell you. I had no concept of the outside wilderness. Your parents never told me what they did when they left, and I don't know much. Xiang Beifei pondered for a moment, and after a while, he continued, Then what does Grandpa think of their work? They are pioneers, struggling for the future of humanity. Xiang Qingde declared solemnly. Does Grandpa hope I will become a pioneer in the future? He asked again. Xiang Qingde, looking at his only grandson, his eyes flickering with a solemn light, said, I don't interfere with what you do in the future. Everyone has their own choices. It's not about being sensational, but about being true to oneself. You should live for yourself, not for someone else. Xiang Beifei regarded his grandfather, a very thin old man with a full head of white hair. The years had left deep marks on his face, and perhaps due to constantly taking care of his grandson. Even his silhouette seemed a bit hunched. Yet this old man had always been positive and optimistic, full of hope for life, often sharing wisdom with Xiang Beifei, encouraging his grandson and those around him. The phrase Xiang Beifei heard most was, as long as life doesn't defeat us, we control life. This was an ordinary man, but he had always approached life with utmost seriousness. He never complained about his destiny nor belittled himself. After his son's incident, the alliance actually provided a substantial sum of consolation money, but he had saved it all for his grandson. While he was still able to move, he sold vegetables to earn money, thinking of his grandson's future. Kong Daming invited him to live comfortably to ease their burdens, but he did not just rely on his age and continued to work diligently, doing his job well. This was a man who truly lived for himself, but also a man filled with questions for Xiang Beifei. Xiang Beifei took out a pen, spread out the notebook, and recorded the words he had seen on Grandpa's system interface. Bone Mountain, store, manager in the notebook. He also jotted down the matter concerning Xiao Shang, lining up all the clues and sorting them out. So far, the clues were fragmented and a key thread was missing to tie them all together. What are you writing? Xiang Qingde inquired. I am taking notes on Grandpa's words, Xiang Beifei said earnestly, excerpting Grandpa's sage advice, which I can use as material for essays in the future. Ah, is that so? Xiang Qingde was taken aback. How come the kid's responses were always so out of the box? He had intended to persuade his grandson not to be too impulsive next, but his grandson's words had completely thrown off his train of thought. I was just speaking off the cuff, nothing profound, Xiang Qingde said, suddenly feeling a bit embarrassed following his grandson's mention. Not listening to the elder's wisdom leads to immediate loss, Xiang Beifei remarked. Grandpa's lived a long life and definitely sees things more clearly than I do. I must remember your words. Well, that's good to hear. Xiang Qingde was delighted. His grandson was willing to listen to his lectures, nothing could be better, and at the very least he probably wouldn't do anything rash. Xiang Beifei flipped to the back of the notebook where the imprint of his father's handwriting was. It was filled with intermittent words. After a moment of silence, he casually wrote down what Grandpa had said, and then closed the notebook. Grandpa, you don't need to be so frugal anymore. I can make money, Xiang Beifei stated. Where could you possibly earn money? Just focus on your studies. I'll worry about making money. Xiang Qingde dismissed with a wave of his hand. I am a martial artist. I can make money by doing tasks for people at school. Last time, I even helped Uncle Lu catch a criminal. I've made quite a lot this semester. How much can you make in a month? Not much, just around this amount, Xiang Beifei said, extending 4 fingers. 4,000? If it's just 3 or 4,000, you might as well put all your effort into your studies, Xiang Qingde suggested, waving his hand. Xiang Beifei couldn't help but smile wryly, and handed his phone, showing the account balance, to his grandfather. Xiang Qingde glanced at the balance, which was a full 200,000. His eyes widened in shock. Only then did he realize that his grandson's 4 fingers meant 40,000. Did you earn this yourself? Just this amount alone was enough for Xiang Qingde to sell vegetables for 7 or 8 years. Yes, I have the ability to make money. How did you earn it? Xiang Qingde asked in astonishment. It's easy to make money in an elite school. Basically, no one lacks money. Sometimes, when completing system tasks, they need help from others. I give them a hand and get rewarded. Xiang Beifei paused, then added, So, Grandpa, you don't need to worry about money anymore. If you don't want to work, just retire. We can move to a better house and not huddle in that place anymore. In fact, he had made his money by selling beast pills and desolate beast carcasses, especially the precious beast pills. The chi controlling stage ones were a bit cheaper, but each Meridian opening stage beast pill started at a price of 5,000, and even some of the more rare Meridian opening stage desolate beast pills could sell for tens of thousands. For ordinary people, Meridian opening stage beast pills were unimaginable. After all, many S-ranked awakeners spent their entire lives only reaching the Meridian opening stage. For them, hunting Meridian opening stage desolate beasts was hard, probably requiring a painful sacrifice. Not to mention N-ranked and R-ranked awakeners with insufficient power, facing Meridian opening stage desolate beasts, they had only the option to flee. But for Xiang Beifei it was 5,000 per fist. Xiang Qingde took a long time to collect himself and then shook his head. No need for such extravagance, we're living just fine now. Money that should be saved, must be saved. I am still capable of working. Why is Grandpa saving money? I figure Dad worked his whole life, his cultivation's so high. Surely he must have saved more than he could ever spend, Xiang Beifei said. Beifei didn't know how much money was in Grandpa's account, but if he could earn so much at the Meridian opening stage, not to mention his father, an SR-ranked genius strong enough to surpass the God-refining stage. Encountering a God-refining stage desolate beast, one punch would land at least 100,000. Even though God-refining stage desolate beasts were intelligent and relatively rare, hard to find after so many years as a pioneer, slaughtering Meridian opening stage desolate beasts, he surely would have saved up a 7-digit bank account, right? Half a year ago, Beifei used to think he was poor. It was only after learning about the market for beast pills that he realized that as long as Dad was mentally clear and didn't waste money, he definitely was a rich second generation raised in poverty. Oh, the damned fetters of identity. Truly vexing. But in truth, he wasn't exactly raised in poverty. Whatever others bought, Grandpa never skimped on him. They moved to the urban village because he was still young back then. The family suddenly lost its mainstay, leaving only the old and the young, one without an awakening system and the other with a snowflake system, both powerless to protect themselves. They feared their money would draw the attention of high-level deceitful awakeners who might use their system abilities to swindle it away. Quite understandable. But now there really was no need for that. If someone dared to cause trouble, Xiaohei would directly take care of the delivery. There are many reasons why I saved money for you. Back then, how could I know whether you'd need a lot of money for system tasks after awakening your system? What if you awakened some real estate system and the first task was to buy a house? I have to be prepared for the unforeseen, Xiang Qingde explained. Xiang Qingde had thought everything through very thoroughly. Even though he had a substantial amount of savings, in a world where everyone might awaken to a system, many awakeners needed startup funds for their tasks. Lacking the ability to make big money himself, he had prepared early for Xiang Beifei, saving wherever possible. Xiang Beifei smiled. He understood his grandfather's good intentions. The old man preferred to live a harder life to ensure his grandson's future. Now I don't need to spend money on tasks. I can make it on my own. There's no point in Grandpa saving. Go ahead and spend boldly, Xiang Beifei urged. That money should be saved for you to find a wife, Xiang Qingde said earnestly. Xiang Beifei shrugged his shoulders indifferently. I'm not going to marry an Oscar statue in the future, so I won't need that much money. What you're saying, it's... Xiang Qingde was momentarily at a loss for words. After thinking for a moment, Xiang Beifei said, We will move in the next couple of days. I'll go ask Uncle Kong if there are any houses nearby, and we can move there. Living in an urban village always made him uneasy. Moving to where Kong Daming lived would be convenient since Kong could keep an eye on things regularly. Especially now that they had installed a whole bunch of cameras at home. He didn't plan on touching those cameras but intended to move out first, settling into the new house and then observing if the people secretly surveilling them would come and install new cameras there. Moving houses was the perfect excuse, as it wouldn't arouse the other party's suspicion. Later, he would thoroughly investigate who was watching them and whether it was related to Xiao Shang. But Xiang Qingde was still somewhat hesitant. Grandpa, I can make money. This is the life I want. I don't want to live there, Xiang Beifei stated. In truth, it didn't matter to him where he lived. He wasn't that concerned about such things. He just hoped that his grandfather could have a better life. After another moment of thought, he added, "Also, if I bring a girlfriend home and she sees me living in such a shabby place, she might get scared away." Xiang Qingde slapped his forehead. "Ah, right. Look at this blockhead of mine." Finding a wife for his grandson was a matter of utmost importance. Could not be delayed. In the past, they could live in less desirable places to save money, but now that his grandson was in college and of the legal age to marry and have children, without a house or money, if a future granddaughter-in-law came to meet the parents and there wasn't even a decent place to stay, wouldn't she run away? "We must move." Xiang Qingde looked serious and determined. The matter of moving was imperative now. Xiang Beifei smiled. He always knew what to say to get his grandfather to agree. As noon approached, the restaurant grew busier, and Xiang Qingde quickly went down to take care of the business. After toying with a kitchen knife and a brick for some time without any revelation, Xiang Beifei carefully put them away, then went downstairs to lend a hand as a waiter. What he really wanted was to investigate Xiao Shang, to see what the guy was up to in the restaurant on a regular basis. Xiang Beifei was helping out his grandfather, and his tasks were simple: serving dishes and collecting payments. Xiao Shang was tasked with collecting tableware and taking it to the back kitchen, where employees who had activated the dishwashing system took care of the dishes. Having Xiaofei, a student of such high caliber, here as a waiter seems a bit of an underuse of talent, Xiao Shang joked while cleaning up the tableware. "There's no high or low status in jobs. Working while studying is nothing to be ashamed of," replied Xiang Beifei. Xiao Shang, having gathered the used dishes onto the trolley, nodded in approval. That's true. You really are a high-caliber student. Your words carry depth, far more profound than us ordinary folks." After that, he gave Xiang Beifei a thumbs up. "Everyone at the restaurant has high hopes for you. You're bound to have a limitless future. Enjoy exclusive chapters from Novelbin.com." Xiang Beifei just smiled without saying much, casually observing Xiao Shang's system. The SR-level integration system was a very special system indeed. As the name suggests, this system dealt with all sorts of integration tasks, and it grew stronger with each fusion encountered. You combine salt with water, integration value +2. You mix honey with tea, integration value +3. You blend hot water with cold water, integration value +1. That being said, utilizing this system as a waiter in a restaurant was reasonable, as making tea for customers or blending soup condiments counted as integration. But if that was all there was to it, it would indeed be, as Xiao Shang himself put it, a bit of an underuse of talent. Moreover, his system took a broad definition of integration, not just limited to physical combinations but also encompassing all sorts of general integrations. For instance, blending into a group. You successfully integrate into the waitstaff team, becoming an ordinary waiter, integration value +16. Integration of will and action also contributed to his system values, especially when he took someone's instructions and acted on them, effectively merging command and action. You incorporate Xiang Qingde's instruction to fetch a brick into your actions, integration value +89. You fulfill Kong Daming's request to wipe the tables twice, integration value +9. This integration also included blending thoughts. Hearing someone's words or learning new information was akin to merging their statements into one's own cognition. Xiao Lu tells you he is off duty tomorrow. You are informed of this news, integration value +1. Xiang Qingde imparts some wisdom. You incorporate your fresh impression of him into your cognition, integration value +64. You converse with Xiang Beifei. You incorporate your new impression of him into your cognition, integration value +101. Xiao Shang's integration system, while earning fusion points through system tasks, was actually quite convenient. Fusion could happen everywhere in daily life. An SR-level system was inherently efficient in task completion, and Xiao Shang was certainly not a person of mediocrity. If it were Xiang Beifei instead, and he had such an SR-level system, his first choice of activity would be scientific research. For instance, becoming a chemist, conducting chemical experiments daily, and fusing various reagents. Even if he didn't invent anything, he would still be getting stronger. Alternatively, he might engage in Desolate Beast research. Most of the black tech departments at the Martial Arts College were conducting experiments with Desolate Beast poisons, using the attributes of Desolate Beasts to counter them, often integrating Desolate Beast horns or claws into tech orbs. Another option might be concocting medicinal pills, various healing elixirs, or attack-oriented pills like fire and thunder pills. With the talents of an SR-level individual, mastering and handling these would be more than manageable. Xiang Beifei knew well that for someone like Xiao Shang who wanted to get stronger, relying on being a chef and strengthening himself through the fusion of cooking ingredients wasn't what he should use. He had various other methods available. Being a waiter, at the beck and call of others, was definitely not the best strategy, especially when adding tea and pouring water for others yielded him only a point or two in system value, which was far from what he could earn in other aspects. As Xiang Beifei was tidying up the counter, he continued to examine Xiao Shang's system interface, and soon, he saw Xiao Shang's system logs from half a year earlier. You have fused the saliva of the flying snow fox with the poison of the Dan Qing ant to create an iron tonic capable of killing giant bees. Fusion value plus 97. You have integrated the throat sac of the tear-inducing dark bird into the Yushir formation. Fusion value plus 59. Just as I thought. Xiang Beifei, seeing a large number of detailed system logs, understood his guess was right. Xiao Shang was a research-oriented person. Until December, Xiao Shang's logs were all about Desolate Beast research and fusions. Nearly every day, he was researching something related to them. The last log related to Desolate Beast research was dated December 1st, which meant from that day on, he no longer conducted related research. Following that were trivial system values until a noteworthy log appeared on the 5th. December 5th, Kong Daming interviewed you, and you integrated his personality into your perceptions, fusion value plus 19. December 5th, Xiang Qingde informed you of job responsibilities, and you learned of them, fusion value plus 63. That was the first time Xiao Shang came to Kong's Mansion Feast restaurant to work as a waiter. He didn't continue with Desolate Beast research and instead came straight to Kong's Mansion Feast. Just 4 days difference in between. Xiang Beifei continued to search the logs further back. Before December, there were many logs with a number of unfamiliar names, likely Xiao Shang's colleagues. Zhao Shi tells you about the progress of the dual-tone reagent experiment, fusion value plus 7. Continue your adventure at Novelbin. Com. You hear Lin Long talk about the investigation into the Xiang Qingde incident, fusion value plus 9. At this point, Xiang Beifei furrowed his brow. Lin Long. Who is this person? Unfortunately, the system logs concerning Lin Long were scarce, and whatever was recorded, such as Lin Long demands the Heartborn Beast research report be completed by June 5th, were the only details, with no specifics on what was discussed, attributed to the system's simplistic recording method. So, is it under Lin Long's directive that Xiao Shang came here? Xiang Beifei looked at the system logs, his gaze slightly contemplative, then committed the name Lin Long to memory. He wanted to continue reviewing Xiao Shang's system logs, but unfortunately, Xiao Shang had already been called into the kitchen by Xiang Qingde to attend to other matters, so he had to stop for the time being. The restaurant was busy until past 2 in the afternoon when the number of customers finally began to dwindle. Following Xiang Qingde's instructions, Xiao Shang diligently busied himself cleaning floors and wiping tables, getting everything in order. In the afternoon, there was an hour's rest time for the staff, during which most started to have lunch. The restaurant staff's working hours differed from common people's schedules, with eating lunch around 3 in the afternoon being the norm. The kitchen staff was not limited to Kong Daming alone. He had hired 3 R-level chefs. Other than personally cooking the signature dishes himself, the rest were cooked by the R-level chefs. Otherwise, one person wouldn't be able to cope. Xiaofei, you really outdid yourself today, making such a genius run errands. Kong Daming felt somewhat apologetic. It wasn't right for a prodigy like Xiang Beifei to work as a waiter in a restaurant. Uncle Kong. No need for formalities. We are all family. Ha, that's right, one of our own. Come on. I'll whip up a couple of dishes to fill your stomach. and we'll have a proper welcome feast for you tonight. I'm gonna call Xiaowen over. He said he's been practicing his cultivation. This kid has suddenly become more diligent recently, which I'm still getting used to. Uncle Kong brought out several dishes specially prepared in his gluttonous cauldron. His cooking skills were excellent, and as he cooked with samadhi fire, the fragrance wafted throughout the entire restaurant. Xiang Beifei looked at Uncle Kong's system log. He was still at the early stage of meridian opening, but given his current pace of cultivation, he should be close to reaching the middle stage. When Uncle Kong acted as a pioneer, he was just one of the most common folks with not too high combat talent. He could basically only use his samadhi fire to burn the desolate beasts in battle. However, he played a strategic role in the pioneer team. Not to mention the critical task of ensuring food supply for logistics, he had a very special ability. For instance, he could use his samadhi fire with a bit of seasoning to mimic the scents of various desolate beasts. Desolate beasts also have a food chain. They too go out hunting for food. If the team wanted to hunt a specific type of desolate beast, Uncle Kong's role became apparent. He could make a piece of bread smell like a two-headed sheep, specifically to attract beasts like the bald wolves that prey on two-headed sheep. Uncle Kong's control over different scents was extremely powerful. With him present, finding those rare desolate beasts that were adept at hiding was no problem. After all, the desolate beasts needed to feed, and they would easily be lured out if they detected the scent of their favorite food. Xiang Beifei suddenly thought, was this the reason why Uncle Kong, despite only being at the meridian opening stage, initially followed Xiang Tianqing to a dangerous place like the northern district of the Essential Domain? If Xiang Tianqing wanted to hunt a special desolate beast, all he needed to do was let Uncle Kong produce the specific scent with samadhi fire. Then Xiang Tianqing could deal with the beast once it was lured in. Xiang Beifei glanced at Uncle Kong's system log again. Last time, he only paid attention to the words Northern District of the Essential Domain and overlooked a certain desolate beast. Dang Kong. July 16th, you assisted Xiang Tianqing in killing a desolate beast. Dang Kong. You obtained Dang Kong meat, gluttony value plus 2,369. Back when Xiang Beifei was still in high school, without a system to study desolate beast knowledge thoroughly, he didn't even know what the three souls desolate snake Yuchishin asked him to kill was, let alone a beast like the Dang Kong. In Xiang Beifei's previous understanding, Dang Kong was a kind of auspicious beast recorded in the classic of mountains and seas, and its appearance signified a bountiful harvest. But now that he had systematically studied desolate beast knowledge, he suddenly realized what the beast Dang Kong truly meant. It was a very powerful desolate beast, with a cultivation level of at least God refining. The reason for saying at least was that this kind of desolate beast is extremely rare, with very few records even in books. Some say it has the strength of God refining stage, and there are also records of its power beyond that stage. According to the records, it was a desolate beast that looked like a pig, covered in blue fur, with 4 sharp tusks, and varying sizes. It was said to be capable of enlarging or shrinking. Wherever it went, the straw smelled fragrant, and fruits were abundant. In other words, its appearance would result in the plants nearby bearing fruit, as if moving directly into a season of harvest. The classic of mountains and seas described it as an auspicious beast, and indeed it was fitting. A desolate beast that could make plants bear abundant fruit was very popular among ancient folks. So that means Xiang Tianqing brought Uncle Kong, who was at the meridian opening stage, to that dangerous area to kill Dang Kong? Xiang Beifei pondered. But for what purpose was the Dang Kong hunted? There was no detailed record in Uncle Kong's system. Xiang Beifei took out his notebook again and integrated the clue of Dang Kong into it. Everyone gathered around the dining table, chatting about the gossip of the day. Xiang Beifei was eating and glanced around, not seeing Xiao Sheng. He asked, "Where's Xiao Zhang? Why haven't I seen him? He just reported to me that he needed to go home for a bit and should be back before 5 o'clock, Xiang Qingda said. Xiao Zhang probably has his eyes on a girl from some family. He often slips out during meals. He might be sneaking off for a rendezvous. Haha, said Wu Deqiang, the chef from the restaurant, teasingly. After the lunch rush, the restaurant staff were basically free, though they only had 1 to 2 hours of rest as they would be busy again at 5. Between 3 and 4 o'clock, however, they could go take care of personal matters. Uncle Kong treated his staff well. With his good nature and hearty frame, he wasn't one to nitpick and didn't restrict these things. While everyone was still enjoying their meal in the shop, suddenly, several screams came from the street outside, followed by the sound of something like advertising signs being knocked over. The screeching of car brakes was incessant, accompanied by the sound of shattering glass clinking. What's going on? Everyone stopped and looked at each other, quite puzzled, not understanding what had happened outside. I'll go check it out. Maybe there was a car accident? Xiang Qingde put down his chopsticks and stood up, walking toward the entrance of the restaurant. He had just reached the glass door and hadn't gone out yet when suddenly a car flew through the air, hurtling toward this place with a whoosh. Xiang Qingde gasped in shock at the car's unexpected flight, which jolted him considerably. He wasn't a martial artist and didn't have time to react. The car was coming too fast. It smashed through the restaurant's glass door with a crash and barreled towards him. "Old Master Xiang, be careful," Wu Daqiang exclaimed and quickly stood up. The other employees turned pale with fright, knowing that if the taxi hit Xiang Qingde, with his old arms and legs, it would probably kill him outright. All present were N-level awakeners who did not follow the martial Dao and were completely incapable of going up to rescue. Bang! Xiang Beifei arrived like a ghostly shadow, standing in front of his grandfather and blocking the impact of the taxi with the force of his counterstrike. Crash! The taxi collided with him like it had hit a solid iron plate, instantly crumpling into scrap metal under the force of Xiang Beifei's counterstrike. Twisted pieces of metal scattered across the ground. Xiaofei! Xiang Qingde looked on in horror at Xiang Beifei, having thought he was doomed, only to have his grandson block the car for him. So powerful. The other employees, upon seeing Xiang Beifei getting hit by a car and emerging unscathed while the vehicle itself broke apart, were also shocked beyond measure. They had never expected Xiang Beifei to be able to withstand a collision with a car. "Grandpa, are you all right?" Xiang Beifei asked in a deep voice. I'm fine, but what about you? Are you hurt?" Xiang Qingde asked anxiously. After all, the car had truly hit his grandson. This was no joking matter. "I'm okay." Xiang Beifei kicked aside the twisted metal on the ground and, stepping over the glass shards, walked out of the store with a cold look in his eyes, eager to find out who was so blind as to throw a car in their direction. His brow soon furrowed. The street was in chaos, with 3 huge white crabs wreaking havoc, their immense bodies supported by 8 legs as solid and agile as if forged from steel, covered with sharp, fine hairs. These legs held up their huge bodies, each standing 7 to 8 meters tall and at least 15 meters wide. It was a desolate beast. Xiang Beifei's pupils contracted. This crab was a one-armed crab, a late-phase chi-controlling desolate beast. He had seen one before in the city of the old days and had killed it with a single punch. But the problem was the one-armed crab was normally only about a meter in size, yet the 2 before him seemed to have grown more than tenfold. Clang! 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 The giant crabs twisted their bodies, rampaging across the street, their legs piercing the ground, causing it to crack and sink. Their massive claws, like giant mechanical hands, clicked and snapped, picking up cars and street lights from the side of the street and hurling them about. The car that had smashed towards the restaurant had been thrown by one of the giant crabs. Was it summoned by a martial artist? Many martial artists have the beast summoning system. These awakeners usually kill desolate beasts in the wilderness beyond the city limits to complete system tasks, and then seal the desolate beast's beast pills into their systems as part of it. During battle, they can summon powerful desolate beasts to fight. But if a desolate beast was summoned in this way, it would undoubtedly have a very noticeable system fluctuation. However, these 3 giant crabs had no such fluctuations. They were not summoned by anyone else. They truly existed as desolate beasts. Xiang Beifei felt increasingly heavy-hearted. He was not unfamiliar with desolate beasts, having even fought strange creatures like the ghost mustache of Remnant Visage and Yu Meng. If 100 desolate beasts charged at him, he wouldn't even frown. But the issue was, this wasn't the wild wastelands beyond the domain but a densely populated city. How could such desolate beasts appear out of nowhere in the city? Crash! Bang! The 3 giant crabs caused destruction wildly on the street. Their pincers glinted with cold light and made a whistling sound. They were as tough as metal. One strike from their clamps on a building by the street would pulverize a billboard and demolish the second-floor wall. The wall crumbled with screams inside. People were trapped under piles of rubble, crying out in panic. Windows shattered, leaving glass everywhere, and the scene became utterly chaotic. How could there be desolate beasts? Help! Call the law enforcers quickly. The sudden appearance of the giant crabs terrified many people. Human society was mostly dominated by literary Taoists with little fighting ability, particularly where N-level awakeners were common. There wasn't much combat power there. This wasn't an elite university where S-level awakeners were abundant. This was a civilian living area, and few had seen S-level awakeners. In the face of such a situation, the crowd instantly descended into disorder. Many tried to use their system abilities to fight back, but most were only at the early or mid-stages of chi controlling. One person attempted to use lightning to fry the crabs, but the attack on the crabs' bodies was like a mere tickle. Bang! A large parking sign was trampled by a giant crab and flung towards a crowd on the side of the road. The people unable to dodge in time, screaming as they covered their heads. Whoosh! Xiang Beifei extended his hand in a sweeping motion, pouring out spiritual power that abruptly stopped and wrapped around the billboard, halting it in midair. Leave! Xiang Beifei ordered the group of people. Thank you. The people expressed their gratitude to Xiang Beifei and hastily ran outside. Xiang Beifei's gaze sharpened, and in an instant, he charged out. Bang! With a single punch, he shattered the shell of one of the crabs, smashing it into 2 halves. The massive crab was obliterated by his punch. Its huge body split and fell, crashing into the houses on either side, as many people screamed and tried to dodge. But the corpse, light as a feather, had not yet completely fallen when Xiang Beifei kicked it into the air, where it burned into a pile of ash. Just as he was about to confront another crab, several figures flashed from behind. Quick! Quick! Team 1, evacuate the crowd. Team 2, follow me up. A familiar voice rang out in the distance, and Xiang Beifei turned his head to see that it was Lu Hong. Facing such an emergency, the enforcement officers responded with lightning speed. Lu Hong and his team were there in no time. The enforcement officers didn't have the luxury to wonder where these giant crabs had come from. They were well trained and understood what to do during a desolate beast invasion. Some quickly went to rescue the injured, while Lu Hong led several men towards the crabs. Xiang Beifei suddenly sensed something and retreated back to the entrance of the restaurant. How can there be such huge crabs? Xiang Qingde asked in astonishment and uncertainty. Grandfather, go inside and protect yourself first. Xiang Beifei didn't concern himself with the one-armed crab, as Lu Hong and his team, used to chi controlling the latter stages of development, were more than sufficient to handle it. What he cared about more was the strange disturbance that seemed to permeate the street. It was difficult to say what the disturbance was. Neither a system ability nor a desolate beast, but it was eerie, faintly pervading the street and making Xiang Beifei feel very uneasy. In the distance, the one-armed crab seemed to perceive the presence of the imposing enforcement officers, turned its head toward Lu Hong, and roared, spewing out a white stream of corrosive bubbles. Lu Hong charged in mid-air, leading the charge. His fist ignited with explosive flames and slammed into the forehead of the one-armed crab. Bang! The one-armed crab's forehead caved in, and its tough shell cracked and split, killing it instantly. Lu Hong, having already achieved mid-stage meridian opening strength, needed only a single punch to slay the later-stage chi-controlled one-armed crab. Find more to read at novelbin.com. But his expression was extremely solemn. The sudden appearance of desolate beasts in his jurisdiction was a major issue and not something that could be easily overlooked. Not identifying the source could have severe consequences. However, he hadn't time to ponder further, as there was still another crab wreaking havoc. He immediately charged towards it. Xiang Beifei spotted an elderly woman trapped under the billboard next to a shop. He instantly dashed over, lifted the billboard with one hand, and pulled the woman out from underneath. There was also a 3-year-old child crying on the roadside, apparently separated from his parents amidst the chaos and helplessly wailing. Xiang Qingde hurried over and picked up the child. "Don't cry. Don't cry." Xiang Qingde comforted the little boy in his arms, while watching the giant crabs in the distance in amazement. Then he asked, "Is that a one-armed crab?" "Yes. But they don't grow this big." Xiang Qingde worked in the restaurant and was familiar with the ingredients. The one-armed crab was also a type of edible desolate beast. They were usually killed, detoxified, and then brought in to be delivered to each restaurant. At most, he had seen them as big as a suitcase, but this one was almost the size of a 3-story house. Xiang Beifei also didn't know, but he remained very vigilant in his heart. It was still that strange essence. What on earth was going on? "Grandfather, follow the others and get out of here. Take that road, away from this street," Xiang Beifei instructed. "And you?" Xiang Qingde asked. "I'm going to help others," Xiang Beifei replied. Xiang Qingde was worried, but knowing his grandson might one day become a pioneer facing such situations and considering his grandchild's strong abilities, he instructed seriously, "Okay, but be careful and don't overdo it if things get tough." "I know." Xiang Beifei turned and signaled to Xiaohe. "Xiaohe, protect grandfather." "Woof!" Xiaohe quickly jumped onto Xiang Qingde's shoulder. Although it didn't have much combat strength, its presence should prevent other awakeners with systems from doing any harm to Xiang Qingde. Xiang Beifei turned and ran towards the corner of the street. The road surface of the street was demolished by the giant crabs, the concrete upturned, exposing steel reinforcements, with some places caving into large holes. The ruptured water pipes were spraying water, and a man who had awakened the water control system was shouting for help from others, trying to seal the high-pressure water without success. Xiang Beifei stood by the edge of the large pit, scanning its depths intently for a moment. The weird essence seemed to be coming from below, and by the appearance of the pit, it looked as if the crab had burst forth from beneath the ground. But how could crabs be underground? It's known that Zhouzhou's underground had many powerful protective measures, with each city built with sturdy defensive walls meant as temporary refuges during beast invasions. However, the area where Xiang Beifei lived was at least 1,000 kilometers away from the borders of the wildlands. How could a desolate beast make such a lengthy trek? After pondering for a moment, Xiang Beifei's figure flashed, and he leaped down into the large pit. The scene was chaotic, with only 2 desolate beast corpses left that Lu Hong had killed. "I don't know how they appeared. They just came out like that." Yes, they charged straight through, picking up big trucks and throwing them. It was terrifying. There were 3 big crabs. How could such desolate beasts appear here? Many people, still shaken, discussed among themselves. Many were busy rescuing people buried under the rubble, and others were directly crushed beneath big trucks, their fate unknown. The desolate beast attack was too sudden. The civilians here had little combat power, and although the desolate beasts were killed instantly, the losses were still very severe. Lu Jiwei was in the ruins, searching for buried people with a rescue device. She lifted a car and saw a person underneath covered in blood and immediately shouted, "This person is still breathing. Quick!" Despite the severe losses, fortunately, this world was not short of strong medical personnel, especially in the city center, where emergency measures were very well established. As long as people were still hanging on to a breath, doctors awakened with systems like the Divine Medicine System would bring them back, even if they had lost limbs. One could say, facing a desolate beast attack in the city was much less dangerous than in the wild wastelands outside the domain. Because in the wild wastelands outside, it was not certain that there would be doctors skilled in high-level medical techniques, and if someone in the team got injuries that could not be treated and they couldn't make it back to the borders of Zhuzhou, they were likely doomed. But cities were never short of healers. Lu Hong's raven was scanning the desolate beast corpse. The more it scanned, the more surprising the data it displayed. Initially, he too thought that some criminal had released the desolate beast, but he soon realized the desolate beast in front of him was not from their system at all. In the territory of Juzhou, aside from those beasts controlled by the system, there were basically no large desolate beasts causing trouble. All were kept outside the city walls. The few Juzhou desolate beasts that managed to live and enter were very weak, and only a small part were edible. Such a huge desolate beast like this one in front of them was not allowed to be brought in, because the borders of Juzhou had very strict checkpoints, and large desolate beasts could not possibly be smuggled in alive through system space. If you wanted to smuggle desolate beasts, you had to ensure that you could fool a UR-grade inspection. The suppression on the system was not a joke. Even if you had all sorts of powerful space smuggling systems, you could not hide from a UR inspection. But still, such a desolate beast had appeared in this district, and that was not right. Xiao Lu, over here. Lu Hong saw a girl whose arm was almost torn off, covered in blood mixed with mud, her clothes also torn. He quickly took off his own coat, wrapped her in it, then waved to the medical staff to attend to her wounds. He walked under a billboard, pondering slightly. Witnesses said there were 3 desolate beasts, but why are there only 2 here? Lu Hong's expression was very grave as he continued to search. If the remaining desolate beast had escaped, the consequences would be severe. Xiao Ma, have you seen the 3rd one-armed crab's corpse? Lu Hong asked. No, but this lady said she saw a young man punch the one-armed crab into 2 halves. Xiao Ma turned back and spoke from not far away. A young man? Lu Hong was slightly surprised. Yes, that guy. His fists were blazing with fire. He was so powerful that he kicked the crab into the air just as it fell, and then the crab was cooked mid-air. An old lady was saying loudly. Fists blazing with fire? Could it be? The image of Xiang Beifei flashed through Lu Hong's mind. There weren't many young men who could cover their fists with flames. Sounded just like his rapid flame, so if not that kid, who else could it be? He looked around but didn't see Xiang Beifei, feeling a bit puzzled. Where had the kid run off to after throwing a punch? Dad, how are things over here? Lu Jiwei was on a break, spending her days with the enforcement officers. She had just been dispersing the crowd. Have you seen Beifei? Lu Hong asked. Beifei? Is he here? Lu Jiwei asked, puzzled. You haven't seen him either? Lu Hong felt a bit regretful for some reason. He was disappointed that he hadn't seen the kid immediately, but he quickly said, Never mind that, we need to report the situation here quickly. But speaking of which, why did the one-armed crab become so huge? However, just as he finished speaking, a rustling sound suddenly came from behind, as if something was creepily climbing, and at that moment, a strange aura also started to pervade. Lu Hong felt something was off and immediately turned around, only to find that the one-armed crab he had killed seemed to have cracks appearing on its body, and from those cracks, countless little crabs scrambled out. These small crabs were only the size of a palm, nothing like the 7 to 8 meter high giant crab before, however. It seemed these small crabs had all crawled out from the body of the large crab, or perhaps, the large crab was made up of these countless tiny crabs. In just the blink of an eye, the bodies of the 2 giant crabs had decomposed into countless small crabs, but these small crabs transformed into beams of white light, converging from all directions, and astonishingly reformed into a powerful large one-armed crab. And this time, the one-armed crab had an extremely violent and powerful aura about it. Upon closer inspection, it had actually reached the mid-meridian opening stage. How could this be? Lu Hong was shocked, and his hands ignited with intense flames once again. He had never anticipated such a freak occurrence. The one-armed crabs, once mature, typically only possessed the strength of the late Qi controlling stage, and their size was at most just over a meter. However, the one before them now exceeded everyone's understanding. It had actually become a mid-meridian opening desolate beast. Quick! Get the remaining people out of here. Lu Hong, sensing something was amiss, immediately shouted and gestured to the other law enforcement officers, while he himself charged at the desolate beast. The reconsolidated one-armed crab roared vehemently. Its size had surged to over 10 meters tall, even more exaggerated than before, resembling a mountain. This falling shadow cast a terrifying gloom. Its eyes radiated red light, agitated and ferocious, constantly scanning its surroundings. Many people on the street had evacuated, and not many were left now. However, it seemed to have spotted someone in a building and, in anger, it let out a piercing screech, then swung its iron-like pincer, smashing it into that building. Bang! The building was suddenly torn open with a large hole, and a scream came from inside, where a little girl frantically hid behind a bookcase. The little girl looked terrified. She was alone at home, thinking the crisis was over. The law enforcement officers hadn't managed to evacuate everyone house by house yet, overlooking the child hiding indoors. Roar! The one-armed crab spewed several white foams from its massive mouth, then stretched out its pincer intending to grab the little girl. At that moment, Lu Hong had already faced it, punching the pincer. However, this time his punch didn't shatter the one-armed crab, nor did it break its shell. Instead, he himself received a severe countershock. A strange force from the pincer blasted over, sending Lu Hong flying back. Lu Hong hit a wall, creating a large hole in it. But he was, after all, a mid-meridian opening martial artist. He quickly stabilized himself and darted towards the little girl, grabbing her and then leaping down to the ground with a bound. Take her to a safe place. Go find help. Lu Hong threw the little girl towards Lu Jiwei. Dad! Be careful. Lu Jiwei quickly flew up, catching the little girl, and urgently shouted to her father. She had wanted to help, but seeing that the desolate beast now possessed mid-meridian opening strength, which was immensely powerful and far beyond her capabilities, she didn't act recklessly and immediately retreated with the little girl. As she ran out to the street, she kept anxiously looking back at her father. But as she turned her head, she saw the one-armed crab swinging its huge pincer down on Lu Hong. Lu Hong was flung out again, shattering the bus stop sign. Dad! Lu Jiwei stopped in her tracks, her voice urgent. I'm fine. You hurry and get the others away from here. Lu Hong wiped the blood trickling from his mouth, his body bursting into explosive flames once again. Like an arrow released from a bow, he soared high and charged at the one-armed crab. How could this desolate beast be so strong? Lu Jiwei, clutching the little girl, ran outwards, deeply worried about her father. Although her father was also at the mid-meridian opening stage, it was clear that the defensive power of the one-armed crab was still superior. Such large-scale turmoil had basically not occurred within Jiuzhou's territory, and there had been no city attacks by desolate beasts for 4 years, especially since this place was thousands of miles away from the desolate beast border. Even if there were beast tides breaking through the border, it would be the cities near the border that were attacked first. This area, being an inland safety zone, had never been attacked by desolate beasts. Inland cities had very few elite martial artists who could fight, as martial artists mostly hunted desolate beasts in the wild borders or served as border guards. In city residential areas, there were no desolate beasts to hunt, rendering martial strength unnecessary. Literary Dao artists were more common, and martial artists didn't stay long in inland cities, raising a very serious problem. In a short time, they could hardly find any mid-meridian opening martial artists nearby on this street. Now that chaos had erupted with a mid-meridian opening desolate beast rampaging, and this wasn't a school where a powerful divine refining teacher could be easily summoned for backup. The schools were also 1,000 miles away at the borders, and couldn't immediately rush over. She needed to find help.